I know not all of us can get a hold of independently bottled product. Independently bottled, it's important that I'm clear from the outset. I'm blurring the lines a little bit here. I'm not just talking about independent bottles as opposed to official bottlings, because there's a new space in between for me that I think is really quite exciting and interesting for anybody that's interested in malt whisky, and that is independent distillers. There's always been independently owned distillers. They've always been around, but there's been a real proliferation in the last 10 or 20 years. And they're coming at things really with a completely different view of the market, a completely different understanding of the people that they're selling to, with a completely different business model. One that I leans heavily on a model that was originally laid down by independent bottlers back in the 1980s, you could argue. I think it's interesting today, the space that we find ourselves in, that we have these legacy producers that tend to be owned by corporates, and they tend to be looking after mass market, and they do a fantastic job of distributing whiskey across the world. At the other end of the spectrum, and this is less distributed, of course, we have to remember just how restrictive it can be, but they are getting out there more and more as the years go by. But at the other end of the spectrum, we have much smaller scale, independently distilled and bottled, and independently sourced and bottled. But the scale is crazy small at this end of the spectrum, the independent side. The scale at the legacy side, the corporate side, is massive. So I want to explore a little bit tonight, how is it with all the stock that's available to these legacy corporate big mass market producers, how is that the best that they can do, given how fantastic a job the independents are doing with how little they have? That's kind of the rough theme tonight, and I'll explain more the other side. I'm looking forward to it as always, and I'll see you in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Thursday night. Welcome to the vPub. Back to a solo session, just me tonight, hanging out with you, with 5 really new, interesting, to me, bottles of whiskey to uncork and share with you. And I'm going to use each one as a kind of marker to cover some loose topics based on tonight's theme. The majority of them, 4 out of the 5, are Ben whiskey, or Ben whiskies, that is, they have Ben in the name. And I'm going to just, as I use each of these as a marker for each of the topic points, I'm going to use the Bens as the lens to kind of view things through tonight, for no other reason than they were here, they were available to me. The coincidence was there. Obviously, the 4 legacy Bens are going to be in the glass tonight. And I suspect that this could turn into a little bit of a series, you know, because we could really reach into any corner of whiskey and pick a bottle and use it as an example of to judge that, let's say, whether an independent could do it better or whether the official bottling is really up there. That's the loose topic tonight. It's things that interest me. I want to try and keep this as positive as possible. You know, there was a different theme title for tonight, but I realized how negative it was. And since I'm trying to keep that theme of happiness, whiskey fun, positivity throughout this 2026 on the vPub, I decided to change it around a little bit and keep things a bit more positive. Rather than bash something, celebrate something. That's the idea. Let's see how we got on with that. So yeah, I've got 4 Bens plus another 1 whiskey, a brand new whiskey that's just arrived on the market. And I'm going to uncork all of these with you tonight as we have a wee relaxed chitty chat. Just a solo session. Thank you to everybody for the feedback after the Roddy session last week. It was chaotic and silly and fun and easy for me and just kind of laid back. And I'm always a little bit nervous with that format, that the people watching can actually perceive enjoyable content, of course, but content that is maybe a little bit evergreen too. So we try and pick subjects that we can kind of try and get our geek on a little bit as well, and not spend the whole entire vPub just being silly. But I love it when Ruddy's here, and I loved hanging out with him last week. And the feedback I've got has been unanimously positive. So despite me being a wee bit nervous that it was chaos on screen, you all seem to enjoy it. Anyway, tonight's different night. We're going to see how the guest themes are going to go throughout the rest of the year, and see who I can reach out to. I want to get guests that I find interesting. I want to get guests that don't really have too much in the way of other agendas and things. And I've never ever found it particularly appealing to sit and watch someone when they're obviously trying to sell concepts or products or themselves or whatever. I've managed so far, I think, on the vPub to reach guests that for the most part, I have really, really, really enjoyed them being on the vPub. It's at my invitation, and I like having them there, and it's very easy for me to hang out with them, and I hope that comes through in the content as well. So I've got a few ideas of people I'd like to reach out to in the imminent future, but for the most part, we'll be doing what we always do, mixing it up between community sessions, solo sessions with me, and the occasional guests too. So yes, I'm going to get on to the topic, but before we do that, I'll raise a wee glass to welcome you all. Hope you're sitting comfortably. I hope you've got something nice in the glass. You may detect I've got a little bit of a raspy throat. There is a wee catch in my throat. Sometimes I get this. Sometimes it happens. Most of the time it passes. I really need tonight to just this time to be, it needs to pass. I can't be getting caught out with a virus or anything, but I'm feeling okay, and I hope you are too. Welcome to the vPub. Welcome to your Thursday night. Cheers, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Before we get into the details and the nitty-gritty of the topic, I'm going to do what we always do and jump into just put that on silent, jump into the lounge and welcome all of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. How are you all doing? I hope you're well. Drew from Arizona is here. Good to see you, buddy. Saying great to see you, Roy. And hope the transition to your new platform is going well. Right on point, Drew. Fantastic. So we're at the end of January now. And I was supposed to do a lock-in on Sunday night, but we had a Burns night delayed by an evening. So we had Burns. We ended up having two Burns night sessions, Sunday and Monday, this last past week. And with the amount of people that were coming around here and family and things, I knew that it would be far too stressful to schedule the lock-in for Sunday night, so I postponed it. So we've either got a lock-in this is for patrons and for guardians. That's what Drew means by the new platform, Aquaviti Guardians. Aquaviti.com, that's how to support this content. That's how to sustain this channel. But because of the censorship issues that I was getting from Patreon, it was clear that if I wanted to continue my journey sharing whiskey the way I wanted to share whiskey, that Patreon wasn't the platform for me to do that. Patreon, despite being a corporation, despite being a company, they decided that they're also going to be content censors too, which is not, I believe it's not what they should be doing, but that's what they've chosen to do. So before I incurred any wrath from Patreon, I took things into my own hands and I made changes that were huge changes, seismic changes at the end of last year, and I built a subscription platform in order to wean myself off Patreon. If you're still supporting on Patreon, thank you so much. Of course, you can make the migration across to aquaviti.com, the Guardians over there. But if you stay in Patreon, I will still look after you. Nothing has changed. The only problem is that when it comes to certain language, certain promotion of alcohol, if it's seen as promotion of alcohol, or me linking to exclusive bottlings and things like that, that might attract the attention of the Patreon bots. And it looks like a bit of a brick wall if you want to negotiate with them. So I'm not going to be able to do that over on Patreon, but I will still look after you there. And you'll get updates and invites and all of the usual things that happen on the Guardians page. Everything except for alcohol links, alcohol deals, exclusive bottles, exclusive tastings and events and things like that. Anything that I think that they interpret as me promoting the consumption of alcohol. We've moved back into 100 years ago prohibition, haven't we? They've decided that might not be appropriate. So aquavita.com is where to support me. Drew, what I'll do in the lock-in is I'm going to sit down with everybody on a bit of a relaxed session. and it's going to be nice because we'll get to the end of the month on Saturday. So it might be better to wait until a week on Sunday to do the lock-in, and then you can really see how the dust has settled, and I can measure it all and I can feed back to you if it's been a success. My gut tells me today, as I sit with you now, that there's no problem. You have looked after me incredibly well. So many of you, when you made the transition, you knew that there was going to be a bit of a bump, a bit of an issue, and you often increased your support. You made sure there was an overlap. You kept parallel support from Patreon and the Guardians for a month. You're just amazing, and it really fills the sails with confidence and encouragement for me to continue all of these things, these projects that I do, including, of course, our Thursday night vPub. Drew, thank you very much for your support, my friend, and thanks for bringing it up. Falsgraph class is saying, Eden, seeing your theme of the Bens made me wonder when you will have the 5th Ben in your glass, and what will you think of it? Interesting class, because I did a write-up for the Guardians today, and I told them there were 6 Ben distilleries. We've got Benrinnes, Benromach, Benriach, Nevis, of course. Then we've got Burnobeny and Benbecula. I'd forgotten about Bencool as well in the Lowlands. And that was silly. I mean, they are new and they are absolutely tiny. They're a micro distillery. They're producing less than 10,000 litres a year. Really, really, but they're up there with one of the smallest distilleries in the country right now. But it doesn't matter. They're still a Ben, and I forgot them. So, yes, it's going to be interesting to see. I think it's probably likely to be Burnobeny. That's the next Ben that comes along. Benbecula won't be far behind, potentially. It's on theme, actually. This whole thing is on theme because of how many new whiskies we're having coming along. Paul Eberson is saying, Aquavite. I haven't watched the Roddy one yet. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Paul. I'd be grateful if you pick it up on the replay. Leave a wee comment to let us know what you think of it, and let me know if it was indeed nonsense or not. Jimmy Legg is saying, I thought last week had too much Roddy, Aquavite. Fantastic. I know you enjoyed it, Jimmy. Thank you very much, buddy. We love it when Roddy's in the vPub, says Papa Q. Brilliant to have you in, buddy. I hope you're keeping well. And Alistair Gray's celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 71 months. Just 2 months till the Independent Whisky Festival. That's absolutely right. 21st of March. I hope you're all looking forward to it. And Leith is completely sold out now, unfortunately. So if you're looking for tickets, I think there's some tickets left for the film in the festival. I don't think so. Probably not. Yes, it's been received very, very well after the success of last year. So I'm looking forward to welcoming a lot of you guys back into Leith on the 21st of March. Ryan Ginger. I think I've known you as something else in the past. Anyway, you've just signed up to be a member of the Aquavite Barflies. Thank you, Ryan. And along with a grain of malt, that's James in Sweden, celebrating 70 months as well, just like Alistair. 70 months, 5 years, will pour a tasty Ben Nevis. Thank you, buddy. Thank you, my friend. It's wonderful to have you here. Alistair, as I say, 71 months as well. And a dram that's come in from Trippelberg saying, to your health. Thank you very much. And Okawami has also bought me a dram as well. Okawami, that might be the first time I've welcomed you. Could that be true? Evening, Roy, and cheers to everyone here tonight. A small independent contribution. Hey, let's raise a wee glass to all the barflies that are stepping forward to keep this content completely ad-free. There are no ads running alongside it. I never need to ask Google for money because of you guys signing up to join the Aquavite membership. And you get access to all the channel-themed emoji and loyalty badges and things like that to colour up the chat. Thank you all. But Trippelberg for your dram, and Okawami, Slanchava to you all. Cheers. A nice light dram at 43% in the glass. So you can probably tell what that is. The chat's jumped to the bottom. I'll scroll back up a wee bit and catch some of you. Brian Stormont is here. Good to see you, Brian. I met you. I bumped into you on Saturday, didn't I? That was great fun. Good to see you. I'm glad you came up and said hello, buddy. Good evening, Roy. Great to meet you at the festival in Glasgow on Saturday. Fantastic event, topped off with meeting many fine people such as yourself. Hope you enjoyed it too. I did. It was quite a last minute thing for me. I've been to that festival before. And I think it's a nice way to start the year. It's to kick things off again and get into the swing of it. And I met far more people than I expected to. Usually that festival, it's one of these ones that I can do slightly stealthily and get in and out and just kind of do a wee bit of networking and thing for the exhibitors that are there. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really did, Brian. And I'm glad to hear that you did too, buddy. Whiskey Weekend Dram, Harrow, he's saying still have to switch Aquavitae. Haha, didn't find the time. No rush, Harrow. Do it at your leisure. And remember that when you do switch, you pay the subscription on aquavitae.com to become a guardian. You're paying it in advance. So make sure that you do it when you know you're not doubling up. Patreon takes money retrospectively. So yeah, if you've got any questions or anything, just reach out to me at Patreon, Harrow, and I'll be happy to help you. But it should be pretty straightforward now. Bowman 1999 is saying, good evening, Aquavitae Butterflies. Hope you have something great in your glass, Slantia. I've got something on theme, buddy. What's in your glass? And Sugar Kitty celebrating Roddy with the famous tie-dye Roddy emoji. Falsgraph is saying, so sorry, Falsgraph, it jumped. Falsgraph is saying, and there I was just thinking of Benbecula. Yes, absolutely, Benbecula. Doodle Drum Arnie saying, how wonderful to tune into another Thursday Pick Me Up with all of you wonderful people. I'm just stumbling out of the shower after an evening of stuffing insulation into walls and now relax. Yes, it's not the dirtiest job, right? But it's not the cleanest either, buddy. I hope the project is going well. Grainer Malton James is Sweden is saying, sorry, my maths is way off. And did notice I didn't want to pick you up on the thing. Okay, but 60 months is 5 years, 72 months, that's you nearly, it's 6 years. And I haven't had a whiskey yet. 70 months is more than 5 years, lol. You and me suffer from the same numbers issues, buddy. Gary Field is celebrating being a member for 11 months, saying enjoyed Roddy and looking forward to Leith. Fantastic, Gary. It'll be great to see you again. I welcomed you in Glasgow this past year, of course. And Major Nut is saying evening, just popping in to say hi before going to bed. Also happy to be able to click home my first Hazelburn, a 10-year-old bourbon cask Slantia. Superb, buddy, superb. I learned your name recently. I don't know if it's okay to refer to you. Major Nut goes down just as well. Jimmy Legg is saying, I think your stealthy days are over, Aquavitae. No, you'd be surprised, Jimmy. Not everybody is sick of me quite yet. Gus PW is saying, don't forget Ben Bracken. Brilliant. Ben Bracken is famously a malt brand, a white label brand done by one of the European supermarkets here in the UK. I think it's Lidl does Ben Bracken, isn't it? Anyway, there you go. It can be anything in the glass. It's often white and Mackay stock. So it's wonderful to welcome you all here. I hope you're all doing very, very well. I'm doing very, very well, despite feeling a little bit like I'm on the verge of one of those wee annoying winter virus things. But I'm feeling good in myself. It's just starting to feel just ever so slightly blocked up and a wee catch in the back of my throat. Let's hope that a few drams tonight will help me not care about it very much. Cheers, everyone, once more. Be interesting now to do a poll to kick things off. I always mess up these polls because I often don't put a lot of thought into them. The answers. I have access to lots of independent bottlings. And I just want you to answer whether it's true or not, true or false. Pretty straightforward. Yes or no. Start poll. Okay, there's over 300 of you in, so we might get 100 or 200 responses back on the poll. The reason that I'm asking that is it's not out of naivety or ignorance. It's because I know that there's a significant chunk of you, depending on where you're tuning in from, whether you're tuning in live this evening on Thursday or picking this up on the replay. Thank you all for everyone that does pick it up on the replay. I know that a Thursday night live doesn't suit everyone. Depending on where you are, you may be forced to explore whiskey through the official releases because of scale of outturn, because of distribution agreements, because of all the dynamics in the whiskey market, right? You might not, some of the whiskies that I'm going to uncork tonight, you might just be kind of holding your head going, here's more stuff that I can't get a hold of. And I always feel there's a kind of bittersweet side to sharing the whiskey with you because I know that that's the case. But bear in mind that we're here to share whiskey on a very broad platform. We're here to talk about all aspects of whiskey. I'm not really sitting here to hold up bottles and suggest you should run out and buy them, or this should be your next bottle to pick up. It should be here is a bottle that's new to me and I want to share it, and I'm going to talk about things. I'm going to talk about that distillery, the producer, the specs on the bottle, whatever revolves or orbits around that bottle. I'll find something to talk about. Sometimes the whiskey is incidental, and I hope that that's what comes across tonight. I'm not going to be pouring things in order for it to be FOMO generating. However, I think it's important that I caveat my language based on what whiskey you guys can buy. And I know that there's a chunk of you out there who really don't get access to independent bottling. And it was suggested to me, and it has been suggested to me in the past, that my community, my audience, the people that tune in to watch me, it's created by me, and it's created by the content I share and the language that I use. That makes sense. English probably is a first language, certainly. English is a second language if you're fluent and you can understand a Scots accent. All of that's obvious, the obvious stuff. People that are interested in whiskey, super obvious. But then it becomes much more kind of nuanced. And if people watching find themselves with a very thin selection of whiskies to explore, and I spend my time at the leading edge, bleeding edge of whiskies, I'm potentially isolating some people, especially people that are just thinking about stepping into whiskey or coming into the whiskey bubble. And I do need to be mindful of that. And I think it's important to try and keep things so that at least some of the content is accessible to everyone. However, I think that if you've been around the vPub for long enough, you will realize that I have to follow my mood, and I have to follow what stirs my enthusiasm, my passion, and me keeping my interest so high in whiskey generally. So that's what I tend to be sharing. Greg's Whiskey is saying the real answer to the poll is yes, I have access to some independent bottlings, but not the most compared to UK, Germany, or Dutch markets for sure. Greg, nice to see you, Greg, in Paris. And he's brought up a good point. And, you know, for the sake of yes or no, it's kind of, you know, maybe there should have been a middle ground there where I've asked some, but not much. And it could be interesting to see how that splits rather than just the straightforward yes and no. But based on 179 of you that's voted so far. Well, that's more than I expected. I have access to lots of independent bottlings. Yes, is coming back at 78%. But that means that there's still potentially close to a quarter of you that do not. So it's something to bear in mind. It's not necessarily going to stop me discussing all the things I want to discuss, even if that involves an evening or two discussing independent bottlings. But it does mean that I'll lean the discussion towards topics that are wider reaching, talking about the whiskey, the style, the profile, the distillery, all of those things. So it doesn't necessarily need to focus around individual bottlings. Harrow's saying flooded with independents, so it's difficult to stand out. For me, it's the price. So Harrow's in Germany, I think. No, Harrow, you're in the Netherlands, okay? So lots of countries in continental Europe are very, very rich for whiskey pickings, right? The Netherlands being one of them. So it's for me, it's the price, but I'm also buying blends compared to standard single malt like Turntable or Noble Rebel. It's interesting the amount of people that have fallen in love with the B word because of products like Turntable and Noble Rebel, right? Turntable is a blended Scotch series, and Noble Rebel is a blended malt series. Henrik Schmidt, the Serakoviti North Star, Dranmore, What Whiskey, Signatory Vintage, and Danish bottler Fadaniel. That's not one I've heard before. Great bottler. So Henrik's getting access in Denmark to fantastic selection of indies by the looks of things. Ian Bruce is saying, I can find some great indie bottles available. However, there are still a few, like Little Brown Dog, that still need to reach the shores. That is also interesting. So I guess that there's going to be a lot of whiskey brands that you hear us talking about. Newer ones that have come along, likes of Living Souls. Little Brown Dog's been around for a wee while now, but I can sense that their reach might not be as massive as many more. They've got Woodrow's of Edinburgh. We've got, as somebody's already pointed out, I think it's Harrow has pointed out, there are so many independent bottling brands to keep up with that it's almost impossible. So many distilleries, so many indie brands, and so many new brands and ranges and releases constantly coming all the time, which is a fantastic thing from a consumer, customer, enthusiast perspective, but it can be a little bit intimidating at times. And even for geeks like me, who buy a lot of whiskey, it can be tough for me to keep up. That's when the community swings in and we keep things manageable through doing it almost not hive-minded, but let's say lots of us trying lots of different things and sharing when it's good and warning when it's not so good. Everwind is saying, I can find some independent bottlings in DC and MD. So that's DC is Washington, isn't it? Maryland is MD, not Virginia, you're saying, but it is primarily the big IBs like Signatory and G&M, etc. Of course, that makes sense that it would be. Hellswood is saying very lucky to have two amazing independent bottlers on the doorstep. Previously, all online purchases. So she's talking about the peninsula down at Campbelltown. So she'll be talking about what whiskey and Cadden Heads, of course. And Jeff Whiskey's in saying, with the tightest whiskey budget yet, 2026 will be the year of independent releases and blends for great value. And I think that when you look at the content that Jeff puts out, his ability to put out that standard of content with such a mind on budget is phenomenal. I hope that Jeff, you and I are hanging out on Saturday night with other cool guests. I think Jenny's coming along. I think there's myself and there's Rob. Rob's joining us as well. And we're getting together over at Jeff Whiskey on Saturday night for a live stream. And the reason that we're doing that is we are celebrating 5 years already of Jeff Whiskey. Jeff, if you drop the link in here, maybe if I've got it on my phone, I might be able to get it from my phone and paste it in. Could that work? Let's try that. Would that work? I can copy from my phone. Yeah, look at that. And then I can pop that in and I can pin that. Message pinned. We've got over 200 votes on the poll now, so I'll leave it going for a wee second more. It's good that we can have a pinned comment and a quote happening in the background. But we're still at 78% of people saying they can get a hold of independent bottlings. So that means that it's relevant content tonight for the majority of us. But I would love to hang out with you to celebrate 5 years of Jeff Whiskey over on a wee live stream on his channel on Saturday night. You would have to go over to Jeff's channel and subscribe for a reminder. I've got the link in the lounge here. So if you click that, that'll take you across. Okay, let's get on with something I'm quite looking forward to, actually. DJ, I'll add an aquavita to your post. He may see it. So someone's trying to get my attention. Hi, Roy. I'm watching from Keith, not far from the beautiful Strathyla. Hey, that's fantastic. You're spoiled with distilleries around you up there. I hope that enough of them are open and trading and looking after you, buddy. It's nice to have you in here. Yeah, as pointed out, if you're trying to get hold of my attention, what I'm doing right now tonight in front of you is I'm picking up the orange. And in order to get that highlighted, type aquavitae or at aquavitae, and I should see your comments. I've got a better chance of seeing your comment. Cheers, aquavitae. Looking forward to some whiskey competitions. Oh, fun and games. A gamified version. That would be right up my street. And Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying also aquavitae. Gone is the time here in France where not only could find one or two independent bottlings, Michael Couvreau being bottling only Scotch whiskey, there are way more now, but mainly focusing on French whiskey. Yeah, when you've literally got hundreds of, albeit quite small scale, but hundreds of distilleries in France, and some of them putting out the Armoric brand, for example, they've got 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old whiskey now, single malt whiskey in France. It's starting to eat into, I would suspect, the demand for a lot of these independently distilled and independently bottled Scotch whiskies. Overland Rams is in saying, yeehaw. He's saying, oh, hey, yo, or something. Chuck, how you doing, big guy? How you keeping? Nice to have you in here. Rick Johnson is the Whiskey Zone. He's saying, I'm extremely fortunate in San Francisco, where there are a few great retailers for independent Scotch. Indeed, California looks to be, certainly in the populated areas anyway, rich picking for indies. And Drew from Arizona said, would be great to know how many times a cask has been tried by an independent and passed on before it lands with some other independent bottler aquavitae. I guess some independent bottlers must have more skill with additional finishing. I don't think it's finishing. I think it can be finishing. But I suspect finishing often happens because things are plain or ubiquitous. There's a lot of the same stuff, so they need to switch it up and make it a bit different. I know that most of the traded stock that's out there is not sampled first. You're going on spec and trust and relationships and things like that. So occasionally you do get some weak casks coming through, but it's rare. And what's really interesting about independent bottlers is that they can't afford to bottle the stuff that's poor quality because their business is so granular, and every single bottling is literally their reputation at stake. So they have to be very careful. Some independent bottlers out there, the G&Ms, the Signatories, the Cairn heads, the big independent bottlers, they can maybe get away with it a wee bit more and put out things that are a wee bit more risque, a little bit more interesting, a little extreme, let's say, really super dry, super sweet, all of these things. But generally speaking, especially when you're a small bottler, you have to be super careful with each step, is my theory. There isn't a single independent bottling available to me, says Jimmy Legg, but I can get 6 different Dalmores. One of them is the Dalmore Cask Curation Series for $60,000. It's hard not to end up negative, but we're going to touch a wee bit up on quality. I don't want to get into a rant about overselling, which is exactly what that is. There's no other way to dress it up. There's every chance that thing has been coloured and chill filtered, maybe not. I don't know anything about most of the Dalmore releases these days, funnily enough. I have never happened across a recent Dalmore that is actually in any way grabbed my attention. It is so easy to just dismiss. It's really a shame because it's not what's made, it's what's bottled. Paul Mackay, golf coach, and Paul is in. Good to see you. My last 4 whiskey purchases were indie bottles. Fantastic. I met Paul at the weekend as well, and he witnessed me bouncing a Glencairn across a concrete floor. Sometimes they survive, but on that occasion, it did not. Dorpass Whiskey, St. Aquaviti, also California, is currently the only state with access to Thompson Brothers. Also see my above super chat. I did not catch that. Tim, I usually much better at that. Lismore 18 looks like a distillery bottle, but is actually an indie. Part owned by the Grant family, an incredible value at $43 for 43%, 18-year-old Glenfarclas. Well, I guarantee you, if that's the case, I think I've seen that. I think I saw that in Spain. Is it in a Glenfarclas shaped bottle as well, Tim? It's not one that's very familiar to me locally here. I'm sure it is available. But if you're enjoying it, you're enjoying it. 43%, there is a chance it's going to be filtered, of course, I suppose. Dalmore for 60 grand, says Petehead. Darn, I should have bought stock exchanges and caramel. E150A caramel he's talking about rather than the sweet stuff. Highland Hamish is here, coming soon from the Thompson Brothers, a blend of Chininic and peated Dalmore. Interesting, because they are neighbours. They're in Allness, right, literally next door to each other. Not next door, but very close neighbours. And Jimmy Legg is saying, yes, it's 3 bottles, so that's a positive. I'd go a bit further, so it's the £60,000 as a collection then. I'd go a bit further, hardly makes it a bargain. I'd go a bit further, says Pedro Meneses. Good to see you, big guy. How you keeping, Pedro? He's saying, with Dalmore Aquaviti, I've never had anything from them that I'd rate above a 6 out of 10. If that's the Dramface scale, a 6 out of 10 is actually a pretty decent score, Pedro. Cheers, everyone. Let's get on. I'm going to open the first of 5 bottles tonight. We'll be going through these quite quickly. Apologies for the tissue noise. But this has just been released. This was delivered earlier this week. And this is not a Ben. I think that what I'd like to talk about is how some independent distillers are using an almost independent bottling type model in order to look after their business and releases. And I think one of the ones that's interesting to talk about is Benromach. Since the 1990s, Benromach has been owned by an independent bottler. They've been owned by Gordon and MacPhail. Gordon and MacPhail have a long history in independent bottling. But they came along at a time when single malts they were doing distillery bottlings. They were literally almost being like a contract official bottler for so many brands out there, Longmorn and Glentochers and Ardmore and even Macallan with the Spey Malt series. The distillery labels from Gordon MacPhail was one of the first ways to get all of these individual single malts in front of consumers. Way before there was a plethora of official bottlings from all of these distilleries. However, I think that they've been far too long and drawn themselves away from the presentation, that legacy presentation that the blend market was catering to for 100 years. Around the early 20th century, the 40% thing through negotiations and clumsiness and a push for temperance and all of this nonsense. Famously, Lloyd George was trying to get the ABV to be down lower and lower and lower. It was ironically the industry that was arguing that it should be kept higher because whiskey is not great at low ABV. But the 40% thing became, for a while, the maximum and then quickly became the minimum. And that went into legislation in the 1980s and it's been ratified and hardened since. So now we live in an environment where the minimum ABV is 40% ABV, or what used to be Old British Imperial 70 degrees proof. All the market was therefore 40% ABV. And it wasn't because all the whiskies tasted wonderful at 40% ABV, or everyone could enjoy whiskey at 40% ABV. Make no mistake, they were quite happy to take gorgeous, thick, oily, beautifully complex whiskey and just dilute it and get it in at bottles at 40% ABV to sell it, because that was the market as designed by the producers and as consumed by the punters, if you like. There's no argument. There's never been anyone in whiskey that has successfully justified 40% ABV bottling practice to me ever. They can often say it's about accessibility and getting new people into neat spirits and keeping the ABV as low and accessible as possible. It's nonsense, because there's next to no difference between 40, 43 and 46% ABV, especially if the flavour and the texture and the experience is much richer at 46% ABV. It's all about profit, and they use lots and lots of different ways to justify it. There are genuine cases where 40% ABV can literally be cask strength. It is possible, and that's wonderful because it's not diluted, so all the kind of natural components that deliver that texture and flavour has a chance of still being intact and undiluted. So 40% cask strength is different from 40% bottling strength. Okay. In Gordon MacPhail and Benromach, the distillery that they own, and the Cairn, the distillery that they built, what we have is a company that's in a bizarre, stretched out, long period of transition, but it's moving in the right direction. The Gordon MacPhail bottlings, the majority of them gave up on chill filtration a few years back. The Discovery series is still out there at low ABV, but the majority of Connoisseur's Choice, the distillery labels and everything today, certainly their cask strength stuff, single casks, that type of thing, is all fully natural and it's fully supported. We've got the same kind of hybrid scenario happening again in my glass tonight. I've got a 10-year-old Benromach. Beautiful single malt whiskey, easy to enjoy. What are we missing when it's at 43% ABV for the 10, the 15 and the 21-year-old? Because we are missing something, and there's no argument. It's the more years that go by, the more I realize how much of a travesty it is. Chill filtration is bad for whiskey. Dilution's not great either, but some dilution is okay. Over dilution is problematic. And I think my experience of some of the higher strength Benromachs, the over dilution that we get in the 10, the 15 and 21, I think the whiskey is suffering now. But there are rumours that that is changing. All the contrast series from Benromach, all of it, vintage age statements. So we've got a distillation date and a bottling date on the bottle, or a year. We've got all the specs, all the geeky details, everything we could possibly want to know. And it's all different ways of drying oak, different types of barley, different kind of casks, different. The Contrast series is a really, really geeky way for them to almost take their in-house spirit and present it in an independently bottled way. It's almost like an official bottling parading as an independent bottler. So today, I've got the Cairn under this tissue. And this is a first, because how this is presented, oh, a nice wee sticker there. I was about to tear that. You know, it's the little things, isn't it? I don't want this to slide out my hand. I want that to focus. So there's a wee Cairn logo there. I don't know the orientation, whether I've got it the right way up. And we've got that same kind of geometric branding over the tissue and stuff. This is good. Why am I making a fuss over this? Because I'm not one for cartons. I don't like tins, tubes, boxes, additional extra packaging. I don't need it. I don't think whiskey needs it. So when you've got this amount of excess packaging that it's shipped in, you just toss and get rid of. That's sufficient. It doesn't matter whether it's a tin or a tube or a box. If it's mail order like this is, it's going to come in shredded cardboard, bubble wrap, air sacs, polystyrene beads, packaging on top of packaging on top of packaging. I think that this is the way that whiskey should be sold. And a wee wrap in tissue is a nice touch. So this is their inaugural. This is called their first peak. 70 cl bottling, bottle number 579 out of only 1,000. I meant to check if this was still available. I think it's still available. It wasn't particularly expensive. I bought this, I think, about a week ago. So if I was to check right now to see if it's still available, Peak is spelled P-E-E-K, of course. It's a look, a peak. Cairn Distillery. I think I bought it direct from them, so shouldn't it be in their shop? Maybe it's sold out, or maybe I'm just not finding it. Maybe the navigation is not obvious, but the first buyer whiskey, here we go, come on. The things I'm clicking, single malt whiskey, that's maybe going to work. Add to basket, £50. Okay, so this is still available. It's 50 quid. For those of you that are interested in such a thing, it's direct from Cairn Distillery. I've not tried this yet. I haven't even sampled this anywhere. Distilled, matured, and bottled by the Cairn Distillery, Granton and Spey in Scotland. So this is a brand new Speyside distillery. And I was trying to think back. Benromach's obviously been revived. We've got obviously Speyside Distillery itself that's now in transition, of course, that's gone. The Spey brand and things. But Speyside whiskies, okay, there's some more on the horizon. But up until now, it's been a generational thing. So I think this is quite a big deal. 3 years old, first peak, fair enough. Interesting strategy, but they've got a 3-year age statement on this, which is pretty good. When did you last see that, actually, on a single malt whiskey? Do you see the dark band there? 3 years old. 57% ABV. This is not a soft thing. This is not a light thing. The text is very, very small for me to read if there's much about the cask on this. This bottle captures a moment in time. This very first single malt Scotch whiskey to be released from the Cairn Distillery, more than a taste of things to come. It's full of flavour, ready to be enjoyed today. Okay, so they're quite confident. This 3-year-old whiskey is our first ever single malt from the distillery. It provides a delicious snapshot of our progress so far. Best enjoyed in good company with great friends. This first peak at our single malt whiskey is full of sultanas, vanillas, aromas. So it's not really talking much about the cask makeup here. No matter. That would be nice if they told us what the casks are doing. Now, I've not read any chatter on this. I've not looked for reviews on it. This is purely just me. In my experience, that was very, very silly of me not to do the usual glug to the microphone there. And I think it's quite fairly straightforward, quite nicely presented. As if this is the design aesthetic that they're going for, I think this is acceptable. I think it's quite nice. It's slightly, ever so slightly reminiscent of Ballandalach, maybe we could say, now that I've lost the focus on the camera. How long do you think I would hold that there before the thing focused, right? It's crazy. Ah, dearie me. I bet you I could get it to focus. Come on, there we go. It's trying now, isn't it? So let's have a wee nose. Bear in mind, I have already given you a slight caveat that I'm feeling a wee bit blocked up. It's winter viruses and things, isn't it? But I'm smelling, and I believe I'm smelling. Sorry, I'm able to nose, and I believe that I'm able to nose tonight. I also believe that I'm smelling okay too. Actually, quite a lot of oak. There's a little bit of an edge here. There's high ABV in the glass, so we do have a little bit of kind of knees and elbows, a bit of youth about the nose, but it's not extremely young. We've got a lot of first fill active wood here. There's lots of kind of oak tones coming into things. Some spice, some specifically wood spice. Some kind of warm notes, wood polish. Lots of orchard, bright, sweet red apples. Red's good. There's a redness to the bouquet here. This is a quite bright, quite a rich nose. A little bit fresh and clean too. Sweet apples. Confectionery. Maybe cola cubes. Maybe boiled fruit sweets. Leaning a little bit into some caramel tones as well. Caramel toffees. And some sweet orangey notes, but maybe with a little bit of zest behind it too. This is nosing really quite nice. A little bit of youth, nothing off-putting at all. In fact, it's really pleasant. I think if you were nosing this blind, I think you would be easily placing this much older than 3 years old. No question. Some active wood. Cheers, everyone. This is cheers to the Cairn and their first whiskey. Let's hope it's a decent effort. Wow. So I had myself braced for 57%. I had myself braced for 3-year-old. Wow. It's only 1,000 bottles. They've probably been very, very careful about selecting the casks here, putting the very best casks forward. I do want to have a wee bit of water in this as well, but first sip, neat at 57%. It's cracking. Has anyone else tried this? It's not the thickest, it's not the weightiest or oiliest, but it's rich and it's full. Lots of wood spice, some kind of sandalwood notes in there, some kind of almost an incense type vibe to it. No smoke, for those of you who were watching last week again. I'm going to do a vPub on that whole thing, that whole peat smoke and peat blight and everything. I think it's one of these cool things that people, I think, need to understand, especially for me and what I do. This isn't a smoky whiskey to me at all, but it's wood tone led. That said, There's nice soft spices behind it too. There's nice kitchen spices. There's a nice finish here. I'm still able to taste this now. I got a nice wee blast of the sweet fruits coming through. Mostly, I would suggest some citrus. The citrus it's almost like it says it's breathing. I'm getting more sweet citrus coming through, but I think I'm still getting mostly orchard. I have to say, I'm finding this, and it fits with the theme tonight. I'm finding this more and more, where I'm being pleasantly surprised, and it's often young whiskies that are doing it. So I'm going to just put just a few wee drops of water into this 57% whiskey. Just give it a chance. Get the glass nice and coated. Neck pour, usual caveats apply. Of course they do. What does that mean? It means that there's the whiskey's, it's been bottled. It's all very, very aggressive. It goes into the bottle, it gets sealed, and straight away it doesn't get a time to stretch or breathe. Then it goes through transport, and it's in trucks, and it's in shops, it's delivered to you, it's upset up, everything up and down. And you sometimes need to give a whiskey a little bit of time to breathe. And it can't really do that in a sealed bottle with very little headspace. But open the bottle up, get some whiskey out into a glass, give that time to breathe, and give the bottle and the whiskey liquid that's in there a bit of air contact and a bit of time to relax as well. It's not a thing with every whiskey you've ever had, but as we go through our whiskey journey, we discover that it becomes a thing that we need to allow for. This is a neck pour. This is also a neck pour of a very good whiskey. Oh, this is really quite together. And I know I try to stop myself saying, hey, this is good for a 3-year-old whiskey. This is good for a young whiskey. Let's put the caveats off to the side. Think about the Ardnahoe 5-year-old inaugural. Think about Ardnamurchan's inaugurals way back in 2020. You know, think about all the inaugurals that's come along, White Peak, countless more that have demonstrated how good the whiskey can be at a young age. I always thought that the Cairn would hold off a wee bit longer and give us it at 4, 5, 6, 7 years old something. But they've just gone for it. They've probably realised this whiskey's coming along great. Let's make a plan for a 3-year-old release. I'm going to do something I might never have done before. £6 delivery. That's how easy it is to, obviously, because I've been on this site, it's logged me in instantly, the payment's all set up and everything. I've just bought myself a backup bottle for, that's great whiskey. That'll be a good bottle for me to have to keep as a wee bit of a keepsake and share in the future. Be a great thing to gift. But I suspect that I'm going to have a lot of fun sharing this with people and surprising them. It's a neck pour, so I have to be careful. I have to not be too effusive, especially when I'm going to go on and start to talk about the Ben tonight, the Benromach. Because there are things that I think that G&M could adjust and tweak a little bit to make everything a lot better. But it's difficult for me now because there is somebody in charge there that's doing a canny job. That's a good whiskey. Incredible. Really happy. £50. 57% ABV. Somebody got the memo. When was the last time you saw an Inaugural arriving in the market for 50 quid? When was the last time that it was this amount of effort was put into it because they really hope that people are going to be opening it and drinking it? When was the last time you saw 1,000 bottles of an Inaugural still being in stock days after its launch? It's the days that we're living in today. Things are much more competitive today, and everybody's going to need to not just put the word quality on the label, but put quality inside the bottle. Well done, Gordon MacPhail. Well done, the Cairn. There's no mention of Gordon MacPhail anywhere on this. I'm just checking the founding date for this distillery. I hope you can tell that I'm quite taken by it. 2022. They've only been distilling since 2022. I remember playing foot golf in the shadow of the distillery just a couple of years back, thinking, I wonder when that's going to be ready. Sandy McDonald is in saying, so surprised they have bottled it 3 years, but just bought a bottle. Well, Sandy, I have to say, I'm not nervous about your reaction to it. I think you're going to enjoy it. I think you're going to enjoy it when it's £50 as well. Whiskey friend, Alan, it's Alan. Good to see you, big guy. Saying cheers, Roy. Just picked up the Cairn 3-year-old. Looking forward to it. Alan, again, I'm sure that you'll put out a video review of that one. I'm curious to get your take on it. I think that it's almost fitting in line with the theme that I've wrote about this to Guardians, and I suggested to them that we've never known the amount of choice and amount of selection that we have today. It's never been as good as this. But I'm also very, very mindful that despite the legends of the past, we've never known the quality of whiskey to be as high as it is today. And I'm going to try and argue that. And I'm also going to suggest that it is at the inspiration of or directly relating to the leadership shown and the possibilities shown and the innovation shown by independents. Let's move on to Benromach. One of the problems and one of the gripes, and it's the gripe that you would get from somebody who's spoiled, somebody who's a little bit entitled, somebody who's a little bit fussy. And that's going to be about the amount of Benromachs that we have today, especially through their contrasts releases. Now, make no mistake, I love the contrast range. I really do. And I've bought the majority of them. I don't think there's many contrast releases that I've missed. The net result is I think I've got about 16 different takes on this new branding of Benromach up on the shelf there. I started tonight in the glass with a 43% 10-year-old. But I was thinking about grabbing one of the contrast releases, and it would have been an eeny, meeny, miny, mo, because anyone that I pick is good. The minimum, even if you prefer one over the other, or you decide that one's a bit woody or a bit oaky, and because there are a couple of them that are just a little bit cask driven. Luckily, I'm okay with that, and I also believe that the Benromach spirit is big enough and robust enough to handle that. But they have this policy of putting, I would suggest, too much out there. Why is that a problem? People have too much whiskey on the shelf. And I think it's nice that they're experimenting. And I think it's nice that they've got that choice. I think it's nice that they're doing it all natural and at prices that we can afford. This Benromach cost me £57. Now, you might think it's non-age stated, but without spelling any on the computer, if it should focus here down at my finger, you can see 2012, 2024. So we've got a vintage year and we've got a bottling year. So this is age stated. This is 11 or 12-year-old whiskey. So what I'm pouring into the glass here, this is the latest that I've picked up. It's been on the market for quite a while now, 46% ABV, contrasts high enzyme. So they're speaking about the barley that they've used here, and this is a specific type of barley that's developed with a high enzyme content, and that is fully intended for it to be, it's very, very different from a heritage grain. It's very, very different from organic grains. It's intended for it to function as efficiently as possible in distillation. And I think they even said it on the box somewhere. We talked about it. It's usually the type of grain that would be favored in grain distilling. And that is because there has to be 5% mixed in with whatever the other grain is, wheat or corn, in order to start to, it's an enzyme catalyst for the entire distillation process. So what they've done is they've taken this very specific high enzyme grain, and made a contrast bottling out of it. It's very, very pale. It's what I would say it's probably the palest of the Benromachs that I have, which I'm okay with. This is the color of whiskey. It's gorgeous and gold and appealing to my eye. But this one is interesting to me because it says non-chill filtered on one side of the label. Handmade at the Benromach Distillery, founded in 1898. This limited edition release has been crafted using unpeated high enzyme barley. Most commonly used in grain whiskey distilling, the spirit has been matured in first fill bourbon barrels, resulting in fresh apple, pineapple, and a long finish of oak and peppermint. Oh, peppermint. Let's look out for that. Oh, it does actually have an age statement on here as well. Look at this. Very cool. I mean, it's interpret. You could say 2012 to 2024. That could be 12 years, but it also could be 11 years. But no, in tiny, tiny wee font there, if the camera's going to focus on that, just above the vintage statements there, you see it says 12 years old. Go Benromach. So yes, there's just so many of these available. Not all available on the market right now, because they do come and go. They are obviously vintage releases, they're batch releases, so they will disappear eventually. But I'm certainly accumulating them far, far, far more quickly than I'm getting through them. That's not my biggest problem. My biggest problem is twofold. All the contrast series serve to show us how fantastic the 10 and the 15 and the 21 could actually be if they were presented more naturally. I'm not going to flog the dead horse that is, when is Benromach going to switch from 43 to 46% in natural? It's just too much. I know that it's too much. We've talked about it to death. But that's what it does. It shows us, it ends up making the 10 and the 15 and the 21 come across a little bit insipid, and I don't think they should. The other problem I have with Benromach, which I think is a bigger problem, especially as their stocks mature, everything is first fill. So when I want to go back and try okay, this is a bad example. This is a really, really old bottling. This is a Creative Whiskey Company exclusive malts Benromach, 1989 vintage, 11 years old. So this was a gift to me. It's been on the shelf, somebody's shelf for a long, long, long time. It's actually gifted to me from David Stark. Distilled 26th of July 1989. But this is, I was looking for the cask in this. I'm pretty sure this is from a sherry cask. I can't quite catch it. It's very dark. Benromachs, independently bottled Benromachs, are very, very rare, hen's teeth. But it strikes me that I'm going to have to go to auction to get some of the old vintage style Benromachs if I want to taste any Benromach that's either from refill, refill hoggies, ex-sherry hoggies, ex-bourbon hoggies, ex-bourbon refill casks, or that type of thing, because there's none of that coming out from the official Benromach. Have they made a policy that everything's going to be first fill? Because most of the things on my shelf are anywhere between 7, 8 to 12 years old, the contrast series, and a lot of them are already really quite oak-driven. Let's go to this one. I have to say, first approach on this. Pretty sure this is first fill bourbon. Exclusively first fill cask matured, it says. I think it's bourbon. It noses like bourbon. Clean green apple and pineapple in the nose. Not as sweet, so we're looking at not a particularly ripe pineapple, but certainly pineapple. And did it say pineapple on the label? Has that already been put into my head? It does say pineapple and a long finish of oak and peppermint. We'll look out for the peppermint too. But pineapple's absolutely there. It's like you've freshly been skinning a pineapple, the slightly green element of a pineapple. Green apple. It's green. The nose is green. There's a creaminess to it. You could maybe go towards a porridge or a cereal creaminess. So it's not like dairy or butter. It's more of a cereal grain creaminess. A little kind of florality, maybe a light spritz edge. Green. It noses a bit like something that has come from refill casks, bourbon casks, and it noses a bit younger than 12 years, I would have to say. Anyway, I'll jump back in and hang out with you guys for a second. Cheers, everyone. Maybe the virus I've got is making everything taste fantastic. Maybe it's just tonight. It's going to be one of those kind of nights where everything is just, I am in the mood for whiskey and it's all going to taste great. That tastes great. That is my style of whiskey. The cask is first fill. Great. It's light touch. The casks here are not super active. They've let the spirit breathe. They've let the spirit take the lead here and be vocal. It's a little bit light on the palate, so it disappears. It kind of does evaporate, but the flavor, no way that nose prepared me for that lovely hit of very clean, very pure malty whiskey. Oh, dreamy, dreamy, dreamy. There's no part of me that wants to reach for any water here. Listen, this isn't thick and gloopy and oily. This is more of a kind of silky, kind of slightly fine sandpaper type. That's wrong. Velvety even. It's not thick, but the texture is inviting. Because it's ethereal, because it disappears from the palate so quickly, it's got that Moorish element to it. This is the type of whiskey that you'd get through quite quickly. It doesn't hang around. It encourages you to go back for another wee sip. So a wee bit of that Benromach element there. Just a wee bit of leaf mulch. A wee bit of farmyard, maybe. Nope. Mulchy, grimy. So through this really clean, bright and green spirit, there's just an edge of almost like if you enjoy a Cairn or a Hazelburn, a slightly, yeah, cigar, moist tobacco, but no, a little bit more vegetal than that. Leaf mulch is good. I think we'll go with that. I think you know the vibe I'm going for. Now that I've tasted it, I can nose it, I suppose. But maybe one of the cleanest, brightest, prettiest Benromachs that I've sipped in years. Almost every other Benromach I've had is much, much darker than this. and that plays out on the palate, though all those first fill casks can often be really quite active. They've coloured the whiskey, they've flavoured the whiskey, and they've left their mark on it. That's not the case here. This is really light touch, really light touch. Amazing. 333, that's Hoyt. I think that's Hoyt Hemphill, has joined the Aquavitae Barflies. Hoyt, I don't think that's the first thing. If that is Hoyt, I don't think it's the first thing you've joined, buddy. I think it's a rejoin for you guys. What's the guy to say? An interesting point, Roy. Aquavitae, I believe distillers have to remain flexible about their cask policy in order to highlight the distillate in the optimal way if possible. I know that there are distillers out there that practice dematuration, so they're trying to get their whiskey to 15 or 18 or whatever it may be, and it's been in first fill casks, and it's starting to it's taken on everything from the cask that they want to have in the liquid, so they take it out of the first fill casks and they recask into a second fill, third fill, whatever it may be, casks to just slow things down. This is something that they're going to want to let time have a hand in, so they can't have the wood running all over everything. So this dematuration is a thing, but I don't think it's a policy with Benromach, because literally their marketing, their labeling, everything, they talk everywhere about first fill, first fill, first fill, which is great. They're investing in wood, they're investing in casks. And whether we want to admit it or not, a lot of us are seduced by flavours in whiskey that come from the wood. You know, we can get a bit up ourselves when we talk about distillery character and things like that. Distillery character is one of these kind of things that I lean on and I use to discuss and describe whiskey, but it frustrates me a little bit as well, because in 2026, unless you're a blender, you know, or unless you're trying to put things into boxes and buckets and things, distillery character is a little bit debunked these days, when distilleries can make often anything you want them to make. Alan Smith has seen your spot on, Roy. I have that high enzymes, and it's a lovely spirit forward stuff. I'm glad you're enjoying it as well, Alan. Falsgraf, Benromach have been a basic taste that to me seems to scream honesty. They're doing really good stuff on that basis. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that, the really good stuff. Jeff Whiskey saying a bit of fizzy funk, a lovely fresh fruit bottle. It is, buddy. Fizzy funk is a good way to put it. So rather than fizzy, I would suggest like a spritz, like you know, if you've ever kind of had an atomizer with anything kind of vaguely fruity or perfumey, and you've got that kind of atomized aroma hanging in the air, and it's green fruits, a wee bit of florality, but not much, more fruity, fruit blossom, you could say, just really good. Yuri Simply About Whiskey is saying, I love Benromach since I've tried it a long time ago, and it never disappointed me, even at 43% ABV. Moreover, it's often exceeded my expectations, and I love it, says Yuri. So he's fallen in love with the stuff, and he doesn't mind that it's 43%. But I would also gamble, Yuri, you wouldn't mind if they changed it to 46% and stopped chill filtering it. I'm not going to dwell. What I will do is I'll pick up class, his Falsgraf's point, because he's talking about the honesty, the genuine integrity, that the way that G&M and Benromach are going about their business at that distillery. And they put the words handmade on the label and things. What does that actually mean? Well, Benromach's often talked about as the Springbank of Speyside, and I can understand where that comes from. It is not the same as Springbank, but a lot of the things that they do, certainly compared to their peers and neighbours in Speyside, is very Springbank-esque. And there are elements that could be automated where they do choose to keep human hands in place. They can't just put handmade on the label and then they've got two people controlling the entire distillation from a touch panel. So we do have something of a gem, but this is a distillery producing a few million litres a year, a couple of million litres a year at Benromach, right? Or they're capable of such things. And they've managed to somehow bring a range that I'm complaining it's almost too much choice. That's inspiration from independent bottling. I'm certain of it. They've also managed to keep something tangible and honest and traditional, dare I say, about the brand, the image, the product, Now, it's all very, very easy to just take with a pinch of salt. But I think the reason that Yuri and me have fallen in love with Benromach and have an exceptional amount of bottles on the shelf with that branding on it is because of that. So tonight, when I talk about the rest of the bottles that I'm going to open are going to be from independent bottlers, I wanted to pause for a second and say, stop. Independent spirits today is independent distillers, independent bottlers, and independent brands. These are companies that are not thinking and panicking constantly about profit warnings and shareholders and how long the tenure of their job will be if they have to share bad news with anyone. Because whiskey right now, in too many hands, are going through decisions, clumsy short-term decisions based on that dynamic. It's no coincidence that the ones that are able to bypass that and not get sucked into that clumsy mess are the independents. So we could talk about William Grant's. We could talk about the Grants of Glenfarclas. We could talk about a multitude of other independently minded companies. J&A Mitchell, Springbank, Loveroy, Hazelburn, Cairn, Cadden Heads. We could talk about all of those products. And then you start to realize as you talk about them, the stuff that you've fallen in love with, the stuff that you chase, the stuff that you want to share with your friends, you may not be aware because it's professionally branded these days. You're drinking product that's come to you through an independently motivated mindset. And I put it to you that, and I'll argue to you that the reason that you love it is the quality and that model, that mindset, but that it's been building for 50 years. And this has been building on the back of concepts that was first brought about by independent bottlers. Way back in the 80s, way back in the long lost midst of time before I was ever interested or even cared about whiskey, certainly. Over time, that meant that the focus shifted to malt whiskey, and then the focus to how that malt whiskey was bottled, what cask it was from, what strength it was going to be bottled at. All of that became important because we stopped chasing a consistent product to be the same every time, the market that the blends built, to something that could be variable and different every time. That is something that malt is perfect at. But it's a difficult concept for shareholders to understand or interpret. Gav's Drams bought me a dram, you superstar. There's no need, Gav. It's wonderful to have you in, buddy. Thank you very much for your generosity. No comment from a pal through in Edinburgh. Gav, I hope you're keeping well. I hope I'll get to see you at the Leith Independent Spirits Festival this year, buddy. The Nick Pod is saying I might have to seek out a contrast bottle. I've only tried the core range and wasn't blown away. Absolutely. I think that Benromach can seduce and beguile you from the 43% 15, 21, 10-year-olds. But I think if you really want to engage, and if that's your vibe and your lane, go to Contrast. It's 46% ABV, but you'll also get single casks, and you'll also get their annual or batch released cask strength releases as well. Yuri is saying, definitely agree, Aquavite. Good for you, big guy. I'm glad that we see eye to eye. Jimmy Legacy and Benromach is more Cairn than Springbank, in my opinion. So I sense then that that's a positive thing for you to say, given how much you love Glengyle and Cairn. Jimmy, so maybe you've got a wee soft spot for Benromach too. Andy's saying, I've yet to have an indie Benromach. Buy the Contrast range regularly. Currently enjoying the Caden Heads 12-year-old Benriach Amontillado. Aquavite, chewy, fruity, and oily. If only their official bottling 12-year-old was this good. We're going to get to talk about Benriach tonight. And your comment, Andy, is prescient. Lind Music is saying, speaking of indies, full flavour campaign this week was as the Danish SMWS Festival kicks off today, lasting until Saturday. Amazing drams to be poured the next couple of days. I hope you enjoy it. Let us know how that goes. Sounds like great fun. It's good to have something to look forward to. And Brian Storm is saying, when you see the age of some releases from indies, some are reaping the pleasure they sowed. We love it. Absolutely, Brian, I have to agree. Jimmy Legs bought me a dram, and he's saying every time I have a Benromach cast strength, I wonder if I need any other whiskey. The one I just opened is just as good as all of the others. Really amazing stuff. So it makes you a wee bit frustrated, because when they're putting together that 43%, 10, 15, 21, that's the stuff that they're using and diluting in order to get it. They get much more out of it, of course. They make a bit more money. In their mind, they're making it more accessible. I disagree. Flavour leads the way. Doropass Whiskey saying, I heard the Benromach 10 is going to 46%. Have you heard this, Aquaviti? Tim, I have heard only rumours. I've heard nothing official as of yet. Henrik Schmidt is saying, do indie bottlers have better staff since they surpass OB ratings? No, Henrik, but it's something that I think we have to touch upon. They tend to have, I hesitate to say whiskey geeks. I hesitate to say whiskey botherers or whiskey enthusiasts at the helm. What they have are people who understand whiskey. They understand the difference between malt, what the different casks can do, how presenting the whiskey in different ways can change it. They understand when, they just understand whiskey. There's a good chance that the majority of the people in independent companies drink the product that they make. I am left speechless. The amount of times I've interacted with corporates in the past, and you speak to people and they have a vague idea of the profiles and flavors from their whiskey, but they soon admit that they don't drink it. And they are often making critical decisions. I think it's possible to do such a thing. In my experience, over the years of buying and drinking whiskey, the people who are actively impassioned and love their product, and most importantly, love the products from their peers and understand that product as well, they're the ones best placed to make the decisions, the critical decisions about how the whiskey is developed. An open door from 3 p.m. the day before the Independent Festival. That looks like an invite on the Friday at Gav's house. I'll be setting up at the festival that day, Gavin. But if you let me know where you are, you never know. Gordon Bunniston saying Living Souls at Southside Club last night. Top-notch drams all round, as expected. Their distillery is producing spirit now as well. Want to keep an eye on in years to come. I can't wait. I think Living Souls, Whiskey Souls, I think the way they've hit the market is just amazing. Everyone to saying, actually, Roy, I think I have a guest that understands the whiskey market place, what is profitable, what is not, etc. You know, absolutely, whiskey is today a business. It really is a business. But even this kind of profitable thing, what we've seen in the last few years is profit prioritized above all else, including health of the business, which is naivety gone nuts. And now the reason that a lot of these companies are issuing profit warnings, stocks are down between 60 to over 100% of a downturn in some stocks, depending on where you look. Ridiculous losses, profit warnings. I think that they're reaping this is the fallout of their decisions over the last few years, which quickly developed into premiumization, over premiumization, uber premiumization, and now overselling. Sandro is saying, ciao Roy, hello, but IBs are usually better than OBs, except Ardnamurchan, which is always delicious. On the first vPub of 2026, I used Ardnamurchan as the model for most of the topic that night, but I could have done the exact same thing here tonight. Adelphi are an independent bottler. It makes sense the way they go about their business and the releases that come from Ardnamurchan, and you can see the overlap between the official releases and an independent bottler mindset. You can see it in the product. You can taste it. Jeffrey Bangers is saying, after having the Edinburgh 10 at 46%, I really want to experience a more naturally presented Benromach 15. There is a difference. Jeffrey, you're here for it. We're here for it too. One day it may happen. Fingers crossed. Annabelle Plauta. Good to see Annabelle. It's Friday morning for you. It's wonderful to have you in. I don't know about the corporate, but everyone I meet that worked at Springbank didn't like whiskey. There's this, we need to be very, very, very careful. When you meet people that are turning malt floors, when you meet people that work on bottling lines, when you meet people that are running stills, they are not required to know, they are required to understand their jobs. The people that make product development decisions, there's a good chance that there needs to be a significant proportion of people in the room when those decisions are made that understand and enjoy whiskey. Everyone is saying, I think the answer is easy. Some strive to be the best they can be and go for excellence, whether others go for what is profitable, in my humble opinion. We can see that in the product. I think we've demonstrated it with tonight, 2 products from Gordon MacPhail and 2 absolute easy bang for buck value, beautiful whiskies, in my opinion. Absolutely. Pete Head is saying, we have a Ben in. Ben. Here we have another one on theme. Ben, Demon Hunter from Canada, is in as well. Good to see you. Good to have you in as well, Frank. All right, let's move on to the next thing. Because if we talk about one of the best distillates that we make in this country that we cannot buy from the distillery, from the official source, the only thing we get is one bottle at 15 years old at 43% ABV, and even then it's not widely distributed. And yet, there's millions of this stuff everywhere. I think, honestly, the 2 kind of risky bottles have been opened tonight and they've turned out to be bangers. I'm optimistic for the ones to follow. Here we have a Benrinnes. This is a Speyside distillery, famously a worm tub distillery too. But this is their 15-year-old Flora and Fauna release. I love Flora and Fauna, as you know. I love the aesthetics. I love the fact that you get access to these workhorse distilleries through these releases. And I love the fact that it's kind of Diageo, the owner's representation of what their distillery character is. This is slightly leaning on sherry, you can see by the colour, but we can't really read too much into that because we know that these may be coloured. Because there's no requirement to add on the product packaging, whether it's coloured or not in Scotch whisky, I think it's a crime. But there we have it. We don't know if we can enjoy this colour and read into it and have it been part of the experience, or whether we're looking at something that's been designed by the addition of synthetic E150A. Gripe over. Here we have something very, very similar to that, okay? So look at the colour here. Now, this is anecdotal. Don't read too much into this, but we have in my hand here an independently bottled Benrinnes. It's only 1 year difference, 14 years old, from refill sherry. And here we have the official bottling, much, much darker. And I'm not just talking about 1 or 2 blocks darker on the colour chart, or half a dozen or more, I would say. This is kind of a light copper. It's gone from gold and it's something a bit more red, a bit more darker, but not too much. There's just kind of red, magenta, highlight tones in the colour of it. Why am I celebrating the colour of this Adelphi Benrinnes? Because we know, because it's from Adelphi, that it's natural colour. This is actually the colour that the whiskey is. Look at my ghostly head poking to you through the colour of that whiskey there. So 14 years old, bottled at cask strength at 56.2% ABV. This was the most expensive bottle that I'm going to open tonight, but you wouldn't scream for 14-year-old Benrinnes fully natural at cask strength, 85 quid. I don't think it's going to quickly become quite expensive, I think. But listen, Adelphi's never been the cheapest bottler. Adelphi has built their reputation on high quality. I have never opened an Adelphi bottling and not enjoyed it thoroughly. I think I buy it less because of the price, but there's often less of it available. It's in demand, people love it. It's built a reputation based on earnest endeavour and high quality. So where the first 2 bottles I opened tonight, I was expecting them to be something, and they overperformed. This one, I'm expecting it to be great. Let's hope that I'm served such a thing. So here we're relying on an independent bottler, not to necessarily present things better than the official, but just to present things. Any of us with exposure to Benrinnes, we have that exposure thanks to, of course, the fact that Benrinnes actually make enough of the stuff, and some of it makes it out onto the open market, the broker market, the independent market, that type of thing. But thanks to that, and obviously the independent bottlers who source this stuff and pick the best of it to bottle. Let's give this a wee second in the glass, a quick nose. Yeah, I think I'm enjoying whiskey tonight. I think I'm in the zone. Jesper Bach is in. Good to see Jesper. He's saying, have you tried the Goldfinch Benrinnes 13-year-old? Had it at the Bond last year and it was a cracker of a dram. Jesper, I don't think I can recall many Benrinnes releases in my life that haven't been anything but very good. Jimmy Like is saying, overperforming is my trademark. Superb, buddy. Aye, you certainly overperform on wit in here. I should be careful. David, good to see you, David. David in Portugal saying, catching from a hotel in Bristol. Oh, wow, you're not in Portugal tonight. You're in Bristol while working for tomorrow's meeting. Not much good whiskey drinking this week, as availability at pubs is poor, but may try a timorous beastie tomorrow. Hey, there was a really good whiskey bar in Bristol I went to a few years ago, just post-COVID. I wish I could remember what it was called. It didn't have the best selection, but it had some antique Americans and BTACs and things like that. And Yuri is saying, Benrinnes and Dilluan is all I'm buying nowadays from Flora and Fauna collection. Benrinnes used to be a great one at first release batch of Stronachy. That's right, Stronachy was famously, single malt Stronachy was famously Benrinnes. Let's have a wee nose of this wee Adelphi, because as we talk about this Ben through Benrinnes, we're talking about the fact that this whiskey, it's not even up for discussion whether the official bottlings are weaker than the independent bottlings. The independent bottlings are legion. They are everywhere. They are legendary. They're loved. And the stuff that comes out of Diageo is the Flora and Fauna, which is this will do often. I love it. I think it's decent if you don't overpay for it. And then the rest of it is overpriced special releases that we just don't touch. It's far too expensive. So it could be wonderful stuff, but the price is prohibitive. We can get experiences from indies. Indies. It's not, the overstatement is not possible when we talk about Benrinnes. It's just obvious. It's writ large. Benrinnes from indies is just better because it exists. This is not nosing to me like a sherry cask. This is coming across almost like a vatting of bourbon and sherry. It's right in the middle of this flavour spectrum, I would say, the nosing aroma spectrum. And I don't strain, it's there. So if you look for some dried fruit, some currants, maybe some prune, there's a wee bit of that there. But what I'm getting is this quite elegant, slightly edging towards just a couple of degrees towards savoury boldness. I don't know how I can articulate elegant boldness. Elegance in that on the nose, there's age here, there's some maturity. It's obvious and it's apparent. So there's a kind of maturity here. There's a bit of dignity about this nose, but there's also a kind of depth and a base and a richness to it as well. The fruit is everywhere. Dried fruit I can find, but I think it's competing with much more kind of fruity tones from just a standard fruit bowl. Orchard, orange, apples, pears. Nothing tropical, not kind of overripe, no melon, no banana, not that type of thing, kind of nice, fresh fruits. a wee edge of not smoke, but flinty, maybe. Not sulfur, but cordite, something distant, something like not off-putting. Fantastic nose. Easy to stick your nose right in it, despite the fact that, for me anyway, I'm anaesthetizing my nose at 50. Oh no, did I say 58.2? This is 56.2. Desperate to have a wee sip of this. Some nice dry tobacco coming in now. Cigar box. Okay, it's starting to stretch a little bit. Okay, we've got the kind of just opening thing. Let's get it roll it around, stick the Glencairn on its side and just let it roll along the desk. Do you ever do such a thing? I need to make a video of that. All the things that I do fidgeting with whiskey glassware. So now that it's coated along the side of the glass, yeah, a little bit tobacco spice, a little bit more of that dried fruit coming in, prunes, dried raisins, and maybe just some spice, some soft spice coming in as well. Fantastic, but fairly close to a rich, quite robust point in the flavor scale, on the aroma scale. Here we go. Cheers, everyone. Imagine you took a trip and as you ran out the door, the only bottle you took with you, you grabbed this one, you took this one. You arrive at your destination and you open it and you think, this is the only whiskey I'm sipping for the next few days. Like David sitting in Bristol right now. If that was the scenario and this is what you opened, you would be very content. You would be very happy. It's almost like everything I tried to get across to you on the nose, but on the palate, you get this fabulous texture. This thing that just sits and it's the development is shouting, I'm here. All these things you were smelling, here now you can taste them. There is nothing in this glass that's at any extreme of the bandwidth. Everything is sitting towards the center. The only thing that drifts away from that center is it's moving a little bit more to a kind of bassy, confident, rich end, but only by a few points, only by a few degrees. Oh, no, this is 14 years old. Somebody poured this for me and said it was 18 or 19, I would buy it. I would just accept that that's the case. I know that this is one of these ones that I would sit 56% ABV. It's going to encourage me to put a wee drop of water in it. You know, I don't need to if I'm sitting on the couch and I don't have water at hand. It's not a necessity. The ABV, the alcohol here is so integrated. It's so drinkable at the strength, but the complexity is screaming out for you to add a wee drop of water to see if you can tease anything more out. I think I got a wee bit more of the spices out of that there on first blush, just from the drops in. It's kind of some cinnamon and ginger. That tobacco thing is becoming more. Cigar box thing. Just elegant. During COVID, this is the type of whiskey we were paying 150 quid for. Not on bottle specs, I'm talking about quality. Here's a statement. That 14-year-old Adelphi Benrinnes is better quality, sharper, more defined, more complex, more engaging than the majority of official 18-year-olds that you can buy. I should caveat that there are 18-year-olds out there from fantastic companies that do wonderful 18-year-olds. I'd love to get my hands on an 18-year-old Springbank. It's potentially coming out today. Was that tomorrow? But that's where I think you would need to go. someone has tasted this cask. Someone has said, this is ready. This is a beauty. They've put it in a bottle. They've labeled it with their name. They've put everything into it and said, this is an Adelphi product. This is good to go. And it's excellent. This is a Dramface 8 out of 10 all day long. This is me speaking about the neck pour. Now, I'm sharing with you a Benrinnes that's only represented by Indies. It enjoys a reputation as being a good spirit, a good distillate. Most of the distilleries owned by Diageo make fantastic spirit, make no mistake. But we can only buy it from Indies. But Benrinnes gets close to being one of those spirits that you can almost buy blind. Couple that with a bottler such as Adelphi, Benrinnes from Adelphi, regardless of the cask, sherry cask, bourbon cask, Amontillado, whatever else they're doing, it becomes so safe that you are confident to buy. Now, would you be that confident to spend the £85 I spent on this on a similarly spec'd official bottling? Because I have to say, if you're like me, you're reading Dramface. You're searching to see if it's been reviewed on Dramface. You're searching to see if it's been reviewed on Words of Whiskey, Whiskey Notes, Whiskey Fun, Whiskey Base. You're searching YouTube to see if it's been reviewed. Basically, you're looking for a trusted source to give you the nudge to spend your £85. An £85 Benrinnes from Adelphi? I don't think that's the case. I think for me, it was a buy blind. The first two bottles, I felt there was a bit of risk that I opened tonight. But by the time I got to that Adelphi from Benrinnes, okay, I don't want it to be bad. I've paid £85 on it. It has to be good. But honestly, if it was weak or underperforming, it would come across in my reaction and my language and the way I tried to get it across to you. That's just objectively beautiful whiskey. And I've tried to describe it to you as best I could. But the takeaway is not the fact that I'm getting some tobacco leaf. The takeaway is that you are going to get whatever you get out of this glass. It is objectively fantastic whiskey. It is the type of whiskey that exemplifies not just Benrinnes, the product that comes from a company who cares. Graham Fraser is here, evening Barflies, Aquavite, another late shift finished. Good to have you in, buddy. You're always a wee bit late. Sorry, you're not always a wee bit late. You occasionally drop in a wee bit late, but I was fortunate enough to get to shake your hand at the Whisky Club earlier this week, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here. Here's a name that's popping up everywhere right now, and I don't know if you were known as anyone else before. This Surge Hunter is saying, Aquavite, have you gone into Ben Nevis? No, you're here in time. But I'm noticing the Surge Hunter popping up in comments and things like that. Thank you for your interaction. Thank you for your time that you're investing back into the community. It's nice to have you, and it's nice to welcome you here. Henrik Schmidt is saying, Aquavite, Adelphi never fails, in my opinion. As a luxury bottler, I'm desperate to try some of the even more luxury bottles that surge from Whiskey Fun Tastes, from Asia, from Kirsch in Germany, etc. I have to say that even the stuff that you get in the UK, there's lots of other, we were talking at the Whisky Club just about Thompson Brothers earlier this week, how we don't even ask, have you tried? We just buy from Thompson Brothers now. And they're building that reputation. And Adelphi, the reason that they're able to do what Adelphi do is because there are people in charge that give a crap. It's the exact same thing at Thompson Brothers. They are people that care, the people that are involved in the decision-making at the critical points, care and drink and enjoy and understand the whiskey. Not just the whiskey that they make or distill, but all the whiskey that they source and all the whiskey that's made by their peers out there in the whiskey landscape. People that care. Independent distillers, independent bottlers, the reason independents do it better is because of that function. Brian Cabayas is saying, just checking. My recent Benrinnes is from Firkin Whiskey Co. Madeira finish at 48.9%, and it's a belter. Doesn't need to be cask strength to be good. I agree with that, Brian. Great value as well. And the Firkin Whiskey Company is by a guy called Mike Collings, who is ex-Diageo. And I suspect he's doing that because he cares and he knows a hell of a lot about whiskey. Daisy Vleeland is saying, evening, Royak, with you and Barfly's just home. Sadly, no Ben's in sight. It's okay. You don't need to be on theme to be here, but it's important to me that you are here, Daisy. Wonderful to welcome you in. Get your feet up. I hope you've not been working too hard. Tim is saying, I'm about to buy for Benrinnes, although I prefer older age from refill bourbon. It's all been good. Distilleries with worm tubs and descending line arms are my thing, Tim. I love how geeky that statement is. I absolutely love it. It's just the type of thing that you could say across a dinner table and you could just lose the people that you're speaking to. But I know it's the type of thing that I say. Let's close down this poll before I move on. It's not changed all night. We're up at 353 individual votes. Thank you all so much for participating tonight. That's amazing to see that engagement. 353 of you have voted this poll live tonight to say that 77% of you have access to lots of independent bottlings. So that's pretty encouraging, and it helps me direct the language that I use, how I caveat things, but also how I curate the content. Because I've always been a bit nervous of how much I wade into indies when it's so much more difficult, to talk to people all over the planet, like you guys are. Adelphi is one of the very few indies I buy blind without any doubt. Aquaviti Pedro is specifically why I picked them tonight. There are multiple other indies, by the way, that I could have chosen for the very same reasons. Let's think about a few things. The smaller you are, the more care that you're going to have to put into things. I think that's true. But most of the independents are still so small that every time they bottle something, they know they're going to be judged and talked about on it. And in order to get a repeat buy into their brand again, it needs to be something good. You scale that up, it's a very, very fast curve, where I think that so much more of the large volume mass market stuff, as long as it hits a minimum floor of acceptance, that's good enough. And I think that starts to happen much more regularly when the decisions are made by people that are just looking to hit those minimum markers. Listen, not everyone in every position everywhere can be a geek and really care and be impassioned and talk about descending line arms and worm tubs. I'm not saying it has to be like that, but there needs to be somebody in place who cares. Because as soon as you leave it in the hands of people who care less, things are going to go wrong. Things are going to get worse. Things are not going to be as good. It needs to be in the hands of people who care. The Fuller and Flora Benrinnes is still one of the top 2 current such Diageo releases, along with the Dilluan. Graham Fraser, I suspect that you've also got a leaning towards the darker whiskies, famously the Blair Athol, the Dilluan, the Benrinnes, or the more kind of heavily sherried out the Flora and Fauna. One of my favourites is the generic 10-year-old. I think it's a wee gem of a whiskey. A wee gem. Let's move on. To hammer home my point I'm trying to make, I'm going to use another Ben to do it. And I don't want to be cruel, because I have discovered official bottlings from this distillery that I've fallen in love with, and I'll share them with you tonight. But I've also got other ones on the shelf that are absolutely vanilla. And I don't care if they just, maybe if somebody came in here and fell in love with them, they could pretty much take them home. I just wouldn't miss them. They're vanilla. What do we find in these bottles? We find that they're 43%. We find that they're mass market. We find the language on them to be generic. Everything about the product creation is generic. These are products that feel like they've been made by committee, safe decisions taken all along the way, and the only product that comes out at the end, even when there's somebody in the mix that cares, Rachel Barry. I believe Rachel really, really cares and tries to do the absolute best she can. I'm encouraged when I hear her language about how much she detests the use of caramel colouring and things like that. Even with that formula in place, we've got releases from Benriach Distillery up in Speyside that are just dull. Nothing is in any way interesting, flavoursome, or engaging. And the sad thing about that is that I'm speaking about the 10, the 12, the smoky releases, and I'm speaking about the 16-year-old as well. One of the most vanilla whiskies on my shelf is that Benriach 16. And it wasn't cheap. And it shouldn't be that plain. For anyone that tells you that the market demands such a simple, clean, sweet, easy vanilla thing, pish. People want flavour. Even the people that aren't asking for flavour, that don't realise that they want flavour, actually want flavour. And that's what makes them go back. The people that want the plain, the simple, the accessible, the straightforward, you know, they can just buy a posh blend, they can buy something, they can buy... If you're representing malt whiskey that's made from 100% barley, yeah, I think it needs to be handled in a different way going forward. I'll go back to the argument I opened with. I have never had anyone justify 40 or 43% whiskey to me and just to justify it as a better decision over whiskey that's 46 or 48 or above and unchill filtered, undiluted. And if it's less diluted, that means that it relies less on topping up of colour. Anyway, I'm going to hold up two Benriachs that I can recommend. And they're both from this series, malting season. This is not cheap, Benriach. It really is not cheap. It's expensive. I'm running out of glasses. I'm pouring more than intended to do, but that's okay. They're just within reach. So if I need another one a wee bit later on. This has been open a while. I've got both here. I've got Malting Season 2nd edition and the 1st edition as well. Both of these have appeared on a vPub before. I'm going to just have a tiny wee teaspoon of this Benriach just to remind myself about a flavour in this Benriach that I love. And it's a flavour that you get from distilleries like Ben Nevis, Benromach, no coincidence I'm talking about Ben's tonight, but also things that you might occasionally get from Springbank, things that you might occasionally get from a really nice Loch Lomond. Something a little bit more industrial, something a little bit more funky, something with a little bit more depth. And immediately it's on the nose, can come across as a wee bit vegetal, I think. That mulch, that sense of a mulchiness is here. But we've also got lovely kind of greener foliage as well, greener notes, brighter fruits, acidic side to things here as well. I'm now being drawn towards even thinking about green olives and crazy things like that, just the way it's coming across tonight. Really quite specific things coming from the glass. This bottle's been open for a long time. Really interesting nose, really different. Really, really, there's dimension here before you've even sipped it. Cheers, everyone. So full of flavour. Bursting with flavour. I'm going to check the price of this because these were far too expensive for me to touch when they first came out. And I picked them up because they went on sale. They're still a bit pricey. They're still floating around the... See, that 16-year-old looks like a tempting price at £70, but just no. But the malting season, whether you're looking for the second releases, I think it's mostly second releases that we have out there. There is one or two still available in the first batch, but they're floating around 70, 80, 90 pounds. Listen, I can understand this. This is very, very small batch. This is a different thing. This is not a mass market product. This is a geeky product. There's a lot of transparency on the label here. This one was bottled 2022, 48.9% ABV, which will be diluted. but it's so good. But it's so good. There is so much extra dimension and depth and richness there, complexity. It might not suit everyone. There's a green edge to this. It's not completely vegetal, but there is a slightly acidic, savoury side to this whiskey that I find really compelling, moreish, delicious, that might be enough to put some people off. But if you like your Springbanks, if you like your Benromachs, your Ben Nevises, if you like something with a bit of dimension, a bit of richness, a bit of three-dimensional depths to it, I think the Benriach malting season is going to be right up your street. It's a very, very different take. Now, the reason that I'm pouring this with you tonight is to point out the fact that even when it was the Benriach Distilling Co., even before Brown-Forman got involved, I found Benriach difficult. I did. You know, Curiositas and super, super rich, heavy sherry, and it's just all over the place. I found it so volatile and switching up and down and all over the place. It was in that transition period, that kind of revived distillery transition period. Yeah, they had the malt floors, amazing, but I found it difficult to find something I could engage with. Not until these Malton series releases from Benriach have I found something that I can really say, these are good whiskies. I have always gone with indies because I knew that Benriach was an interesting spirit. And yet, whether it's the 10s or the Smokies or the 16, the official bottlings, in my experience, are rendered bland. Enter Signatory Vintage. This is one of the most recent ones. This is 100 proof edition number 69. This is Benriach from First Fill Oloroso and bourbon barrels. This is critical to my point. 57.1% ABV. You know what I'm going to hold up. This is one of Signatory Vintage 100 proof series. Excuse me. This is a new one to my collection here. I've got my price written down. I had a wee look back on the orders to see what I paid for this. A fairly recent purchase, £47. £47 for a small batch, 100 proof series from Signatory Vintage, 12-year-old Benriach 2013 vintage. Casks, everything we need to know is all on the label. Do I need to labour how fantastic it is to live in the times where this 100 proof series is available to us? Do you know what? I don't even feel let down, disappointed or offended when I find 100 proof that I'm only just enjoying a wee bit, you know? The value is astonishing, to the point that you'll often hear me say, why are people buying anything else? Well, we're buying everything else because we are promiscuous and we love the search for flavour. We love getting into it all. Oh, not much of a glug from the tall round. But specifically this one, we've had First Fill Oloroso, refill sherry and things from the 100 proof series. We've had bourbon casks in the 100 proof series. But what we've got here is a vatting. Somebody's actually put together, I say somebody, we all know that it's going to be Andrew, right? He's the one that's doing all of his releases. Fortunately, somebody that cares, somebody that genuinely, absolutely cares, as you know. Anybody that watched the session that we had in December will understand that. But this is almost like an indie doing a better take from the stocks that they have in terms of presentation. I've not tasted or nosed it yet, than their official bottlings. These high ABV, vintage, age statement, cask makeup type. And the price is, despite the fact that it's much higher ABV, the price is much fairer than the official bottlings at a similar age. Anyway, let's see if this is a hit or a miss from Signatory. Oh, so this intensity is dialed right up. We've got, and I mean it, intensity on the nose immediately, from ABV. There's a lot of heat coming out of this. I am tempted to reach for water with this one, not because it's particularly hot, but because it's hotter than what I've been approaching up until now as it presents on the nose. There's coffee in here, treacle, some burnt sugar, alongside lots of, I'm actually taken towards pastries, apple crowns, Danish pastries, that type of thing. There's some cinnamon on those apple crowns. There's some sweetness too, so sweet sugars, sweet brown sugars, light brown sugars, maybe icing. I was supposed to look for peppermint on the Benromach High Enzyme when I opened it. I forgot to look for peppermint. There's mint on this. Like a spearmint, like a fresh spearmint, fresh mint. The sugars are soft, brown, not quite caramelized, sweet, but also I can't get away from the darker side of the sweetness, like a treacle note, a little bit of clove, a little bit of challenging spice as well. Okay, now that the heat is dissipated a wee bit, I've managed to get my nose in. Let's have a wee sip at full strength. Full on, lots of texture, builds, big hit of spice. All of that treacle, the darker sugars and the lighter sugars are kind of surrounding this kind of core of a fruity, like processed fruit, like applesauce, like ripe fruits, like not a smoothie. It's not fresh and it's not dried fruits, but there's a core, there's a fruity core to it. This is incredible because if you take something that is from the official bottlings right now, that the majority, more than half of it, that's released is fairly safe in vanilla. Then, despite the fact that this will be multiple casks from Signature Vintage, it is small batch, but it's much smaller in terms of outturn. They're able to craft this and put this together. The finish on this is ridiculously long. It's still going now. And just knock everything that's coming out with the Benriach branding on it out of the park, I think is a failing in Scotch whisky. Like I said at the opening, how can the official outlets get it so wrong with all that they have, while the indies get it so right despite how little they get? This is insanely delicious, objectively rich, full-on good whiskey. But let's forget about how I articulate all the flavors to you and how I dice and slice it to try and explain to you what I'm tasting. Let's just objectively put them on the table. For the price of an official release from Benriach, whether it's the 10 or the 12-year-old, whether it's 43% or 46%, or the 43% 16-year-old at 70 quid, this knocks every single official bottle clean off the table. Not just for Roy, as the whiskey geek, the whiskey botherer, the whiskey enthusiast, the soapboxer, the ranter. For anyone who comes into whiskey new for the first time, even if they found this a bit hot, 57.1%, a wee half teaspoon of water in the glass, they would completely be lit by the flavors in the glass. It is objectively the indies doing much better with a liquid than the official branded bottles. I suspect that the path and the trajectory of whiskey production that we're on, this is only going to get more like this in the future, because the mass market whiskies are chasing the volume now. The margins are going to be compromised heavily, but they're going to be going after as much of that volume margin business that they can get, because they're sitting on tons of stock. That means that they'll be turning the taps on to sell off lorry loads, pallet loads, casks, tankers, I don't know, IBCs, whatever it may be. They'll be putting other whiskey out the door, and it'll be getting onto the brokers market. They'll be selling on to independent bottlers, whatever it may be. So this is going to get even more defined. That chasm that exists between indie and the independent mindset and the official kind of large legacy producer, corporate, whatever you want to talk about them, it's getting bigger. Buoyed by the fact that the whiskey is higher quality. Controversial? I believe fully in that. If you don't believe me, if you think that the quality of whiskey is dropping, I think the measuring stick you're using to measure the quality of whiskey is from those same large, automated, efficiency-chasing, homogenized, vanilla mass market producers. I'm sorry to be so snobby and so rude. If you choose a different measuring stick and use the independent bottler mindset, the independent distiller mindset to measure the quality of whiskey in 2026, it is not comparable. My only worry is there's too much in first fill, and we'll maybe need to kind of throttle back and focus a lot more on kind of dematuration maybe, or that type of thing. But they will follow their consumer, their customer. They will follow their gut, because guess what? They know, they understand whiskey. Whereas at the other side of the scale, they understand business. Whiskey is a prickly customer when it comes to being crowbarred into business scenarios. This is another peach. My goodness, I can find myself havering. That's so good. That's so good. That's so. Where the Adelphi was sitting in the middle of the spectrum, this is kind of pushed the boldness. I would say this has gone a wee bit more towards the sherry leaning side of things. The dark sugars, the dark fruit, that tobacco thing is coming through. There's 3 whiskies tonight that I've had that's had that kind of, this is a kind of much more moist tobacco thing. There's a minty edge to a clean, sharp green edge, spearmint. But let me just kind of the exclamation mark to finish this. This Benriach is £46 and change. Just, there's nothing to talk about. There's just nothing more to talk about. Yuri is saying 100 proof from Signatory is a wonderful dram. And often there is no chance for the official bottling to get even close to them. Let's take Glenord 12-year-old as an example. Superb. The Glenord that I've had, I think it's rinsed now, was the bourbon cask Glenord. Is that the one you're talking about, Yuri? I devoured it, loved it. Falscraft is saying it would be absolutely amazing to have a library of new makes from the last 25 years to judge the quality of spirits, but I guess such a thing does not exist. Well, it will exist within Diageo, for example. They're going to lab test all their new makes, going to make sure they're getting that consistency, because guess what? The majority of what they make is utterly focused on blending whiskey, so the ingredient has to be reliable and consistent and the same every time, so they do that. But I think what we also have to do is define the difference between that model and, independent distillers who are literally just trying to make the best new make they can possibly make, put it into the best casks that they can possibly buy, put out the best whiskey that they can possibly bottle. They hope that through that's how they generate their business success and their profit. Whereas I think inevitably, unfortunately, just the dynamics force the fact that profit drives the decisions elsewhere. Whiskey Mechanic has seen my favourite signature vintage bottlings has been the Glenords. They mix well with other drams too. I mix it with Ardbeg and make Ardbeg. You're Whiskey Mechanic, you're my kind of guy. You and I could be friends. We could sit and play with whiskey and enjoy it together. I've got one more dram to share with you. How are we getting on? We're just beyond 2 hours, so I need to get on with the last one. I know that some of you have been waiting for this one, and I've left it to the end because it's often the most challenging. And out of the lineup that I had tonight, my gut told me that potentially I would be in a situation where this would be the best one to have right at the very, very end. In this distillery, we have a slightly different thing. Some people, it's a bit of a Marmite distillery. Some people don't get on with it, but they are, I have to say, in probably the minority. This is a whiskey that has literally been made legendary through independent bottlers. We love the official bottlings when we can get them, which can be patchy on availability. They've had a non-age statement, they've had an age stated, they've had famously a most transient here and gone. They teased us with a batch 1 cask strength release and then never released a batch 2 ever, which was heartbreaking because it was gorgeous. So they are capable of putting out official bottlings to show how quirky, compelling, indulgent, odd, challenging, how wonderful the whiskey that they make can be. The problem is they're not committed to it. This distillery has relied fully on the independents in order to make its reputation, is my opinion. It is, of course, a Ben. It's our last Ben of the evening, the fourth Ben. It's Ben Nevis. The one I'm holding up to you just now is an official bottling, the most recent livery of their 10-year-old, 46% ABV. It's usually about 50, 55 quid. Some people pay 60 for it, depending on where you are. I think it's always a decent bottle. I picked up this off the shelf tonight and immediately was struck by the fact this is open and it only has a single dram out the bottle. Now, that's how I'm a wee bit spoilt for Ben Nevi. I have lots of Ben Nevis whiskies on the shelf, so it means that I've probably not been reaching for the latest release of the 10-year-old that I have. The other things that I have to choose from, guess what? They're all indies. Now, I've got a Mossburn down there. I've got, I think it's a Lady of the Glen going from memory. I've got a few other indies down there that I could have picked up and brought along, but I had one that was sealed, a very, very recent purchase. And I thought, do you know what? Sometimes points need hammered home. So that's what I'm going to do tonight. Maybe my favourite Ben, Aquaviti, Ben Nevis, he's talking about is his favourite. Henrik Schmidt is saying what becomes the difference at the end from a first fill bourbon cask, Elijah King barrel proof, bottled in bond, equal, same base spirit. I don't think that we are so uptight. I think sometimes you do get dragged into a discussion of the provenance of a sherry cask. You will absolutely get involved in discussions of the provenance of wine casks, even other fortified wines outside of sherry. You can make inquiries as to the provenance of the bourbon cask that you're bottling from, whether it's a Jim Beam, whether it's an Elijah Craig or a Heaven Hill or whatever it may be, Jack Daniels at times, all sorts of things. But I think that the quality of the bourbon casks, in my experience, tend to be much more about integrity and coopering and structure and things like that. I wonder if bourbon casks vary less in terms of quality of flavour that they impart on the spirit. I would have to lean towards somebody that's a bit more knowledgeable about such things. I am already half invested if I just see the word ex-bourbon, whether it's first fill or refill or whatever it may be, whether it's recoopered into a hoggy or if it's held bourbon before, I am already probably going to enjoy the whiskey. Whereas wines and fortified wines and things like that, I become a wee bit more kind of, what are we talking about here? That type of thing. Greg's Whisky Guide is saying Aquavita does exist on paper. Dave Broom reviews distilleries' new makes on his World Atlas of Whisky, and alas, aside from me, it seems nobody noticed why. The World Atlas of Whiskies, I've got it down here. I've only got one copy of it. It's a big, unwieldy, big, heavy kind of tome, big coffee table book, that type of thing. Now that you mention it, I think I'm vaguely aware that such a thing exists, but how much of value do we get from it? You'd clearly do, Greg, and I suppose that is enough. Thanks for drawing attention to it. Pedro is saying there's also amazing Tormore. The Tormore's coming. The Tormores that are coming. I'll be so surprised if it's anything other than sublime. The amount of effort that's been put in to those whiskies, they're constantly just teasing us with little bits. It's coming, and we're going to have a Renaissance story to talk about. Scott Allen, good to see you, Scott. You saying I know I actually live in the desert, but when it comes to independent bottlings, it really is the desert. Very limited choices, and nobody, Scott, but you get to travel. So hopefully there is value in these discussions for you, so you know what you pick up when you do. I took the only Ben off my shelf, an SMWS 78.84 Mingle into Darkness to Ben Nevis at a stonking 67.3% ABV. It needs a drop, but it's great. So Kyle, that's obviously, and Ben Nevis was one of these distilleries that famously did such a thing where it didn't go into a spirit receiver and get diluted down to the kind of industry standard of somewhere in the order of 63.5% before filling into cask. What happened here is it was filled at still strength, and that means that they didn't have the money, they didn't have the access to the cask that they wanted, they didn't want to mature water. That's the truth of it. You know, some people do it deliberately for various reasons, but generally speaking, Glenrothes, Ben Nevis, many DCL or Distillers Company Limited bottlings back in the day were filled at still strength. Henrik is saying, sorry, I did pick that one up. Henrik, didn't I? I'm going back down just as it jumps. I need to catch up. Justin Wan is celebrating being a member of the Butterflies for 26 months. Justin, thank you, buddy, for your support. He's saying bedtime for me. Amazing session tonight. Bedtime, of course, it is. You're in Hong Kong, my friend. Sleep well, and I'll speak to you soon. Cheers, Justin. All right, more comments coming in. I'll try and keep up as best as I can, but I realise that I'm enjoying myself tonight. And I've got one more Ben to uncork. So if we talk about Ben Nevis, I think the reason that it's become legendary from independent bottlers is because of the window into the past that it offers us. When I talk about quality being so good today, there is the minimum acceptable level of quality is much higher than it ever was. And yes, we're talking about continuity, consistency, we're talking about all of these things, but we're also talking about understanding wood, understanding what kind of new make goes into what kind of wood for how long, and all of these things. And the independents understand that very, very well. So when they start to distill their own product, the quality tends to be very high, and they dial it into the new make, and they keep tweaking and making it better and better as time goes on. There was a time where volatility meant that disasters happened, but often the ebb and flow, you know, the swing, the yin and the yang, the up and down, the peaks and troughs, meant that the peaks that opposed those disasters could be sublime. Difficult to repeat, but it meant that occasionally gems could be bottled. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about Ben Nevis. There's lots of other ones that I could use as examples. Brewers and Clyneliches and other whiskies over the years that have been able to just, certain bottlings have just become the stuff of legend, and that's what happened with Ben Nevis. I have no idea what's in this 10-year-old Ben Nevis. This is another signatory 100 degrees proof, 100 proof series, 57.1%, of course, 2014 vintage. First fill, Pedro Jimenez. Second fill, Oloroso Sherry. So what we've got is we might start to imagine some big hitting, syrupy, sickly, sweet PX, or one that I tasted at the Glasgow Whisky Club earlier this week was this really quite savoury, almost like a beef stock soy sauce and Bovril type whiskey that we tried. It wasn't a Benrines, by the way, but it was from a PX cask. But we've got some attenuation in here. We've got some second fill casks used. Oh, they're also second fill. So again, some care's been put together. And look at how beautifully dark and indulgent this whiskey is. You can just about see my stupid looking face through that whiskey as I hold it up to show you the colour of it. But this is number 63, edition 63 of the Signature Vintage 100 Proof series from Ben Nevis. Now, we have an inconsistent product in the bottle here. 2014 vintage, I suspect, is going to be much more consistent than Ben Nevis has ever been before 2014. But we've also got it coming out from Signatory, and just because they're putting it out at £44 and change, literally less than £45, this bottle of 57.1% 10-year-old Ben Nevis cost me £15 cheaper, certain outlets, than the official at 46%. Just think about that for a second. I'm almost ready for it to be a bit lesser quality and maybe okay with it. Let's see. I mean, why is anyone buying anything else? Fortunately, we're promiscuous and we do buy other things. But to have whiskey of these specs at this price point in 2026 is just dreamy. It's like a time machine. The Signatory 100 Proof series is like a time machine to 15 years ago. Okay, let's have a wee go on the nose here. So immediately I'm in a woodshed. There's lots of oak, there's lots of wood things going on, but there's also a slightly solventy edge. There's some kind of creosote. There is a wee savoury edge to this. So in this woodshed, you've got a guy with a mug full of Bovril, if anybody knows what such a thing is. But it's distant. We've got fruit, but it's boozed, soaked, dark, stewed fruits. The type of fruit that you might find in, I don't know, some exotic desserts but actually maybe more kind of like prunes in alcohol, or it's not dates and figs. Prune is more appropriate. But I keep getting distracted by an oily, a mechanical edge, like the type of oils that you would treat metals with. And I'm back in the tobacco vein again, but everything's darker here, richer. This is quite an extreme whiskey. There's savoury here. A wee bit of soy came across there, like a dry, salty, soy, savoury thing, umami even. This is the type of weirdness that we love. Weirdness from the casks, but working quite well with that Ben Nevis spirit as well, I think. Let's have a wee sip. Affogato. Really bold coffee notes coming in there. Didn't nose like that at all, but the sweetness, I suspect sweetness maybe from the PX or something, brought this big injection of vanilla. Coffee and vanilla, cold coffee and vanilla. If anyone knows what an affogato is, it's just one of these things that makes you glad to be alive. Drying on the finish, very drying. So a wee bit of kind of almost hinting towards a European oak character, little kind of the dry spice on the way out. Lots and lots of cold coffee now. Everything is swirling coffee. So everything's sweetened away from that woodshed, mechanical workshop type thing. It's the PX, I think, that's sweetening, or maybe American oak. Yeah, coffee, rich, super rich, intense, everything dialed up, dryness, a little bit of acrid. The treacle that I was getting off the Benriach is here too, but we've now got a burnt edge to things. Wonderfully interesting. Another wee jag, a peak of interest, but the finish is coffee, treacle, vanilla, cream soda, a little bit of kind of not smoke, don't get confused with smoke, but like charred wood, burnt wood, toasted wood. I feel like I could add a wee teaspoon of water to this and just continue blethering, articulating as best I can what I'm sipping in the whiskey. Cheers. Everything I've tasted tonight has been spectacular. It's one of those wonderful vPubs that makes me think of the blend session, the blended whiskey vPub that I did about a year ago at the start of 2025. Some nights you just get that where you're just ready, your palate is ready, you're enjoying the whiskey, despite me caveating tonight with I'm a wee bit blocked up, or I've got a wee scratch in my throat. I'm not feeling that at all right now. Everything has been just yes. And it's just, you could argue what if the bottles that I've put together to open with you tonight were going to bring that type of experience. Absolutely. But it also has to match with my mood and the way my palate is and the things I've been eating and my health and environment and all of these things. But tonight, everything has been meeting quite sweetly. And I've got a night where I'm just enjoying almost everything that I'm opening. And I'm not saying that to fit with my theme, this arc of quality, this arc of the people being in charge are directing where whiskey is going, and we can taste how much they care out of the product. So the ones that I've opened tonight have been specifically purchased from people that I feel care. I suspect that the words I'm saying are often not treacle or tobacco leaves or anything like that, but me talking about insipid, generic, vanilla, middle of the road type experiences versus really eye-popping, wonderful, engaging experiences. I suspect that you guys are experiencing that too. I want to ask you, when you do experience that, are you experiencing it from official bottlings, or do you tend to find the cookie trail of experiences that you fall in love with favor the indie bottler, the indie distiller? I suspect the answer is the latter. I'm finding my nose a wee bit of runny. If I have to have a sniff or whatever, I'll mute the mic, but I'm okay. Hoyt is saying Signatory's releases have been some of the best malts I've tasted, and some of the most affordable as well, right, Hoyt? Black Fen, Conrad, good to see you. A little known fact is that Ben Nevis is the highest peak in the UK, but only the third highest peak called Ben Nevis worldwide. There are 2 higher peaks called Ben Nevis in New Zealand. I'm glad you're here, Conrad. That's fascinating. That's a quiz question for the future. Rick Johnson is saying, when Catherine asks about the whiskey I'm buying, I don't think I should use the word promiscuous. Oh, I think you should. I think it's promiscuous. I suppose it can be applied to other things. Whiskey promiscuous, I think Catherine's going to be okay with. Nice to see you, Rick. It's always nice to have you in. Holy cow, they're up to release 63. Way to go, Andrew. No, they're into the 70s now, I think. I've opened 69 tonight. The Benriach was edition 69. So, hi, Tim. They're doing well. They're doing very, very well. Jimmy Legacy saying whiskey heals again. I picked that one up, didn't I? Whiskey can be a healing spirit, says Falscraft. Donnerpass Whiskey saying, oh, Ben Nevis from Refill Bourbon has a magic funk spirit character you find nowhere else. Sadly, these days it's quite expensive when you can find it, especially when it's the experimental year of 1996. Stefan Novak introduced me to 1996 Ben Nevis in Limburg. And yeah, I came into it a wee bit late, as I suspect the same as you. Falsgraph is saying, not so much the indie bottler. I haven't bought too many indie bottlers whiskies yet, but certainly indie distillers give me the better experience. It's good to hear this back. It's not just me. Yuri is saying indie for sure, but not always, unfortunately. And I think that's a good way to leave it, because we cannot guarantee that just because something is from an independent distiller or an independent bottler doesn't guarantee quality. And it certainly doesn't guarantee that we're going to love it. But I think it guarantees a minimum expectation and that they will take feedback. So even if we engage with it and we try it and we don't think it's right, it's not enough to say, oh, I don't like that. We've got to try and explain why we don't like it. We paid too much. We expected more. It's a little bit too this, a little bit too that. Try and articulate what it is that's not landing with us. And if they can look at that and say, okay, it's a subjective thing, they can continue with a bit of confidence despite the fact it's not gone down well and still experiment. But if they've made a clumsy decision based on far too few people being involved in the critical points of decision making, the feedback is super valuable. Henrik Schmidt is saying signatory fills the painting. We will see an Ardemurchan signatory. The sum of the parts. That would be interesting. I suppose in future, I mean, signatory's model is an independent bottler scaled up. It's on steroids. You know, signatory are not buying a cask and wait until that cask's ready, and then eventually bottling it like a lot of independent bottlers might do. Signatory are buying at scale. I don't know their business. Maybe they do buy individual casks. I'm not sure, but they're typically buying at scale so that they're able to put out lots and lots and lots of single casks, or do the 100 proof series as small batch, the Angel filtered series as small batch, all these types of things. So the model is quite different. It's much bigger scale. Dorpass Whiskey saying most of the distilleries bottles I love have been rebranded by Inver House. All Pulteney 21, Anarch 18, Vintage Balblair, Speyburn 15. So indies are the future. The Inver House has gone from being one of the best of the corporates to being the shittest very, very quickly. I was struggling recently to justify. The only one I got away with was saying that Balblair has got better. Since the rebrand, the 15 and 18 and some of the older Balblairs are really, really quite nice little whiskies. Too expensive though. But then you look at Pulteney, it's trashed. You look at Speyburn, just heartbreaking what they've done at Speyburn, trashed. They tried to revive Knock Do Anok, bring it back again with a 16-year-old. Somebody didn't read the memo. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody gives a crap. It's 43%, chill filtered. They've taken a legend and diluted it into something that's... So whatever market they're chasing is not us. The communication is very clear on our sides. We have read the memo and we understand. But somebody in Inver House is doing something bizarre. And they've bought a New Zealand distillery called Rona. They've bought a Chinese distillery. They're building a Chinese distillery. I just don't know what's happening there. But I know that they're moving very, very fast away from me. And it's heartbreaking, Donnerpass Whiskey. It's Tim. It's heartbreaking for you. It's heartbreaking for me. One of my most memorable whiskey experiences of my life was how Anok 16 taught me the subtlety and how to enjoy the subtlety of whiskey. Even though I didn't know what I couldn't articulate what I loved about that whiskey back then. I'm still a bit rubbish in it now. But it taught me that it was just sublime and amazing. Pedro is saying, what about the new Glencairn bottle labels? I think it was one of the Dramface writers suggested that it looked a wee bit like designed by AI. I'm a wee bit of a romantic when it comes to branding. You know, I think if you leave branding long enough, there's a famous story that goes, not famous, but there's a well-known story that goes about the pot still in Glasgow, right? The interior decor of that has swung into and out of fashion so many times that they no longer care about it, right? It's the same with bottle branding. If they ever change the branding of Lagavulin 16, there will be outcry because you can spot it at 100 paces. It's somehow timeless and retro and modern and everything all at once. Just don't footer with it. Don't change it. It's perfect. Please don't footer with it. Somebody took Glencadam, which looked like the oldest branding in whiskey, and just as it was ready to become cool again, they made it look like so many other whiskies on the shelf. I don't care, because I believe and I trust that Angus Dundee is not going to screw up the Glencadam recipe for success, which is beautifully good whiskey, mostly natural. All the rebranding thus far has been on fully natural whiskies, and I've seen nothing that's non-age stated, diluted, filtered, that type of thing. So hopefully the Glencadam 10 doesn't look the same as it used to look, but the whiskey, the liquid inside, will taste the same. That may appear in a future vPub. Ian Bruce is saying, why is the Anok, etc. being brutalised? I was hoping it swung the opposite direction to become more natural and less fake-baked. It would seem that we're in the minority, despite how vocal we are. Good luck to them. I hope they go off and make lots of money for everybody that works for them and keeps people in jobs. I hope they don't drag the reputation of Scotch whisky down or their own brands down. But I suspect that they've gone in an odd, batshit crazy direction. Cheers, Barflies and Roy Coviti. Missed the whole show and while watching the AM with a coffee. Graham Young, it was so nice for you to drop in and say hello. Now that you're back here watching us on the replay with your cup of coffee, Graham, it's nice to see you, big guy. I hope you're doing well. I look forward to seeing you. I missed you this year. I missed you. That was unfortunate, but it's going to happen. I suspect that you'll be back here fairly often. So there we have it. I have not had an argument to date where anybody can justify to me the ability to put single malt Scotch whisky out at 40% and tell me why it should be done so for any other reason than business and profit and that type of things. Malt whisky made from barley doesn't want to play that game. It tells us how to handle it through the liquid. But in order for you to taste that and interpret that message, you need to give a crap about the whiskey. Not all of the Bens that we shared tonight does so. But fortunately, thanks to the Indies, we have other bottles from those distilleries available that show us the quality is there. And it's not the whiskey that the distilleries are making. It's the process that it goes through, product development, and the decisions that are made at the point of bottling that can make it, or far too common, break it. Thankfully, you and I will continue to chase all experiences honestly, but be reassured by the Indies. Thank you all for hanging out with me tonight for a wee monologue. I knew that this could be a wee bit clumsy. I want this to be a series for me to talk about Indies going forward, how Indies do it better, and continue to find more and more examples of the same. But tonight I chose a very deliberate lens to focus on that, and that was a lens of the Bens. In the future, we'll have another 3 to come along. We've got Ben Becula, we've got Burno Benny, and we've got Ben Cool as well. So there's more for us to discuss. There might even be another Ben's episode. But if this becomes a series, I would like to find other kind of fun, interesting, different ways to demonstrate why I believe, and I think often you do too, that Indies are often better. We do have a quiz at the end. We absolutely do. Of course we do. I suspect that this evening there's going to be a few, if not quite a lot, 10 out of 10s, but I often think that, and maybe it doesn't happen. But I'll tell you the reason why. And I didn't announce it beforehand because I knew that people might study. There is a theme to the quiz at the end tonight, a rare thing, but the theme is going to be the Bens. And I'm missing one of the most famous Bens tonight. I'm missing a Whiskey with Molly. I didn't pick up if he was in tonight. I hope he's keeping well. I do pick up when people, you don't have to be here. Okay, the vPub is here to pick up when it suits you. It suits the challenges that's going on in your life, how busy you are, how early you're getting up in the morning, where you are on the planet, it doesn't matter. Thank you to the people that join live, like all you beautiful whiskey folk tonight, and all the dedicated barflies that pick up on the replay. I'm very, very grateful. A Glen episode would take around 56 hours, says Pedro. Exactly. But there are different ways to split and strip the Ben. The Glens, isn't it? You did the Bens, go for the Glens, says Falscraft. He's encouraging it. Okay, there are more, but still, I think about 28, 29 Glens. I'm getting ready for the Glens Aquavita. Great topic this evening, says Jimmy Jazz. Big guy, good to see you in, fella. I'm looking forward to seeing you this year. I can't wait. Andy Hills is saying, probs celebrating Septics win. What's this? Andy Hills. Oh, okay. Aquavita probably celebrating Sept. Okay, you're talking about the football, Andy. How dare you? How dare you? That's for you and I when we're face to face, right? Brilliant. Thank you so much. Okay, I can tell you that the quiz can kick off much later than expected. But here we go. Good luck to everybody. Please stay. Please hang out. Have a wee go. I think it may be quite easier tonight. Some of the answers I might have dropped throughout the presentation tonight if you are paying any attention whatsoever. But good luck. It's multiple choice. You can follow the crowd. You're only playing against yourself, and it's intended to be fun and interesting. Here we go. Quiz at the end, 29th of January. My goodness, February is almost upon us. Question 1 should be an easy one. Watch out for the asshats. Watch out for the banana skins. Which of these Ben distilleries does not have a red chimney? Which of these Ben distilleries does not have a red chimney? Now, please, you normally have multiple corrects on the opening question. This is a slightly easier quiz tonight, but yet I start it with a banana skin. It's a warning. A, Benriach does not have a red chimney. B, Benromach does not have a red chimney. Or C, Benrinnes does not have a red chimney. Jimmy Like is saying, okay, I'll stay since you pleaded. Thank you, Jimmy. Is that all it takes? I just need to plead. Thank you, buddy. Dan DVDW is saying, Glens, just do it. Jeffrey Myers is saying, can't wait to score a 4 out of 10. Don't worry about it, Jeffrey. Don't worry about it. Just go in. I think you might be surprised. I think you might be absolutely surprised. Be very, very careful with that banana skin. Please be extra especially careful tonight. Tim Donnerpass Whiskey, please be careful. Henrik Schmidt is saying I have a colour issue. Oh. I don't fully understand colour and vision issues. And I know that a lot of the content I do relies on colour, but this one is red and white. Hopefully that's clear. Tim has said he's picked up the clue. He's picked up the hint. Good man. Thanks for listening. And Henrik is saying red. I see. Kyle Taylor is saying, has Benrinnes not a maroon? Fantastic, Kyle. Good to have you in, big guy, as always. Superb. Peter Lee, good to see you in. Good to welcome you, Peter. Tom Frenny is saying, I've arrived late tonight, but I'm staying for the quiz. Good for you, big guy. Will I see you in Scotland this year? Class Falsgraph is saying, the chimneys I can see in the yearbook are all red, says Falsgraph. Okay, I can tell you that, according to the imagery that I have on hand, class, Benriach has a white chimney. Benrinnes, Ben Nevis, and Benromach all have red chimneys, coincidentally. Question 2, which of these Ben distilleries lies furthest north? Which of these is the furthest up the way? Did I see Mikey Hay? And I did see Mikey Hay. Good to see you, buddy. Wow, Pin. Wow. He's saying, not sure if someone else mentioned earlier, but you have a sound transfer problem from your table to the microphone. A big thump every time you set the glass down. I apologize for that. I think it must have always been a thing because nothing's changed with the setup, I don't think. Maybe the way I've got the shock mount set up or something, it's maybe a bit more sensitive. I'll try and work on that in future because I know it's the type of thing that might annoy me. Falsgraph is saying, yes, the chimney of Benriach is not shown in the yearbook. Okay, I see. So you were right by your statement that the ones that you could see were all red. So by process of elimination, you could have risked it. Question 2, which of these Ben distilleries lies furthest north? A, Burnopbenny, B, Benromach, or C, Bencool? Which of those is furthest north? My throat is fine. I'm still a wee bit blocked up, but let's hope that it's on its way out. Is Benriach closing? Yeah, it looks like that. Well, I don't think there's going to be any kind of 1983 kind of shut down and close it down and strip it out type things, but we've currently got the Clynelish Visitor Centre closing, Chirinic, owned by Diageo closing, Benriach closing, Glenglassaw going on a shift share. I'm hoping that what's happening at Benriach is that the shifts are kind of 6 months at Benriach, 6 months at Glenglassaw, or year on year or something. We don't know. Listen, where the corporate's involved, they're going to be making these decisions like toggling switches. It's quite interesting. Blee, says Graham Young, he's going for Benromach being the furthest north. Graham, you and the majority of the barflies and participating along at the end, absolutely Benromach. Listen, we should also be mindful of the fact that when things are being closed or mothballed or whatever, we are also in a position where this is the front end of whiskey for us, where they are manufacturing the new make. Yeah, it could have, dead spots in the availability of stock in the future, but we're sitting on more maturing Scotch whiskey right now than there has ever been in the history of whiskey production. There is so much stock that we shouldn't be panicking, and the industry just has to go around saving money where it thinks it's saving money and making the decisions it's going to make. These types of decisions are not being made by guardians. They are being made by people that need to make the numbers balance. Question 3, which of the Ben distilleries is the largest? By capacity, of course, I'm talking about litres of pure alcohol. Which of these is the largest by capacity? Litres of pure alcohol per annum as well. A, Benrinnes in Speyside, B, Benromach in Speyside, or C, Burnopbenny in the Eastern Highlands. Benrinnes is the biggest, Benromach is the biggest, or Burnopbenny is the biggest? It's interesting to see the numbers drop for the quiz at the end, but I know so many of you enjoy it. And I know a lot of you dip out because it's late in the evening, especially in Europe and beyond, but you pick it up over the course of the weekend. And for all of you who are dipping back in to pick up the quiz at the end, thank you. For those of you who with the staying power to stay for the quiz at the end, thank you. For those of you that are here live with me tonight on Thursday, or actually were slipped into the Friday morning wee hours, a special thank you. Leave a wee like if you're happy to be here. Once more, thank you. I can tell you that you've got me on this as well. Absolutely. These are fairly straightforward things. The Bens, which is the biggest by capacity, is, of course, Diageo's Benrinnes is the biggest by capacity. I stayed for 2 hours just for the quiz, says Pedro. Thank you for your endurance, big guy. Thank you for sitting through me just to get to the quiz at the end. It's appreciated, buddy. Question 4, which of the Bens celebrates 200 years in 2026? Sorry, I'll say that again. One of the Bens celebrates 200 years in 2026, but who owns it? A, the one celebrating 200 years in 2026 is owned by Gordon MacPhail, or B, it's owned by Diageo, or C, it's owned by Nikka Asahi. I think it's Nikka Asahi Breweries, or whatever it's called. We just know it as Nikka, right? A, Gordon MacPhail, B, Diageo, C, Nikka. I've just gone back to taste a sip of that 3-year-old Cairn, and that's an astonishingly accomplished little bottle of whiskey, especially after what I've been sipping this evening. The only thing to say is, wow. B for Diageo, or is Mikey Hay? It's Molasses Mike, the other Mike, is saying Biagio. They pretty much own everything. Well, I can tell you of the 30 distilleries that they do own, I can tell you that they do own Benrinnes. Benrinnes was 1826. So they are celebrating, and I don't know if there will be a celebration, honestly speaking, maybe something for Spirit of Speyside, maybe a special bottling, maybe they might just give it the least amount of effort possible. Whatever they do, there's a high chance that they'll make an absolute arse of it. Rather than a celebration, they'll try and cook it into something exclusive. But the ones that have been supporting and talking about Benrinnes over the years are not the people who are interested in exclusive lifestyle items. Anyway, question 5. We're looking at a distillery here. It would be very straightforward for me just to ask you what distillery we're looking at, but there's a wee tiny asshat on the left-hand side there. Do you see it next to that rusty barrel end? It can't be rusty, it's just peeling paint. Wood doesn't rust, right? Anyway, I'm going to give you 3 potential statements, and you tell me which one is correct. This particular distillery we're looking at has A, a cast iron mash tun, or B, a mix of pine and steel washbacks, or C, it has a worm tub. So the distillery that we're looking at in the image either has a cast iron mash tun, as opposed to steel, full lauter steel, semi-lauter steel, whatever it may be. Or B, it has a mix of pine and steel washbacks. Fermentation vessels are a mix of wooden and steel. Or C, they have a worm tub installed. Peathead is predicting Aquavitae. I think they'll celebrate with a price rise. Surely not by now. Wood doesn't rust. These are the tidbits of wisdom that may, do you mean make Aquavitae great? Yes, wood doesn't rust. Honestly, Jimmy, you know me a wee bit better than some, but the people that know me are probably just as surprised as me myself that given the amount of hours I've done live broadcasting, I haven't made more stupid mistakes than I have. Somebody's looking after me most of the time. What does this distillery? Well, I can tell you that we're looking at Ben Nevis. You probably already know that. In fact, you can see the mountain range in the background there, but I'm going to ask you, cast iron mash tun, mix of steel and wooden washbacks, or worm tub. It is actually B, which has caught out some of you. Some of you might have thought, because of the mountain range in the background, might have been looking at Benrinnes there with its worm tub. Benrinnes is quite a gentle hill, still quite high, but these are quite rugged. These are quite demonstrably Western Highlands mountain outline there, I would say. Okay. That's the halfway point. We do have lots and lots of 5 out of 5s intact. I don't need to go down that list of 5 out of 5s because so many of you, like Brian Caballis, is just celebrating pass mark for now. Job done. Jeffrey Banger's pass mark. There you go, Jeffrey. More than your 4 already. 5 for 5. Now it's going to start to get a little bit trickier, but not quite as bad as a usual week, I think. Question 6. Which of the Bens is named after a Monroe? A, Benrinnes, B, Ben Nevis, C, Ben Cool. Which of the Bens is named after a Monroe? Just going to leave that with you. I'm not going to expand on a Monroe, what a Monroe is or whatever. I think most of you know. Greg's Whiskey Guide is asking, what is a Monroe? Okay, I think I have to. Monroe is a mountain, and in Scotland there's more than 200 of them. I think 250, 270, 290, 200 lots. A Monroe is a mountain that's over 3,000 feet high. Genealogy. I love a pass, says James Morgan. Good to see you, James. How you doing? I don't see a banana skin, says Jimmy Legg. Jeffrey's feeling like $100. Let's see if we can make you feel like $200 before the end of the quiz. Randy Rice is trying to figure it out. Asshat banana skin. There is no asshat or banana skin here. Which of those Bens is named after a Monroe? A. Benrinnes, B. Ben Nevis, or C. Ben Kummel? Some people say Kummel. Some people say Cool. Some people say Kubel. Ben Cool seems to be the wisdom. I need to ask the people that own the distillery how they want their brand pronounced, I suppose. But let's go with Ben Cool for now. I can tell you that the tallest mountain in the UK, only beaten by 2 Ben Nevi in New Zealand, as was pointed out by the chat tonight, is Ben Nevis. It's the only Monroe there. Benrinnes and Ben Cool are both Corbetts, which are smaller than Monroes. What are the rocks called that you carry to the top of the Monroes? Oh, you're talking about the towers, the cairns. People build little towers. People don't carry rocks up mountains, do they, Jimmy? Question 7. Which of the Ben distilleries will focus on locally grown beer barley, partially smoked with local peat and heather? So of the Ben distillery options that you have here, we're looking for one that's going to certainly focus on locally produced heritage beer barley grain, partially smoked with local peat and heather. A. Burnobeni, B. Benbecula, C. Bencool. Starts to get a bit trickier as we roll into the last few. Beautiful whiskies in the glass tonight. I have to say I did not open anything close to a dud. One of my favorite, in fact, one of my favorite, let's say my favorite vPub in terms of whiskey selection in 2026. Easily my favorite so far. Absolutely no idea. So the crowd is my friend, says Greg in Paris. Norpass whiskey saying sounds yummy, but no idea. Yep. This is when you're kind of going on your gut, on the kind of what you build up as an understanding. Bob Wenting is saying Ben Ord. I love it, Bob. Good to have you. And Sugar Kitty's still here. Ben's and a lot of blees. Sugar Kitty is confident and he's absolutely spot on. We're looking at an island distillery here. We're looking at island grown beer barley, and they're actually exporting the peat off the island along with the heather in order to smoke the barley and to get the smoke grain back onto the island. Again, we're talking about Benbecula. Benbecula out in the Outer Hebrides. He's still a very new distillery. I don't know how far they are away from releasing their first whiskey, but one of the Bens. Lots of 7s for 7s in the chat tonight. 1 or 2 wee slip-ups. Kyle Taylor, Daisy Vleeland, Mike Molasses, and Okawami. Good to see you in still, Okawami. Let's go for question 8. There's a loose connection between salmon farming and one of the Ben distilleries. But which? An interesting wee story here. Salmon farming and one of the Bens. A. The one owned by Diageo has a loose connection to salmon farming. Or B. The one located furthest west has a loose connection to salmon farming. Or C. The one located furthest south has a connection to salmon farming. Diageo, furthest west, furthest south. Greg's Whiskey Head is shouting, help, Graham. Brilliant. Fair play to you, Greg. I love the humility of our community. I love that there's no shame in not knowing things. It's okay to say, oh, I don't know this. Falsgraph is saying, I have no idea, but one theme here seems to be B, going by B. Shame on shame, says Jimmy Leg. Oh my God, bee with the barflies again, says Pedro. Can it really be that I did so many blees tonight? Well, once again, you've spotted it. We are talking about Benbecula, and it is therefore the one that's located furthest west. Really cool, quite wholesome story. The people behind Benbecula Distillery, the guy himself made his money on organic salmon farming and has churned a lot of money back into the island, his native island. I think it's really quite cool, and I need to explore it a bit more. It's quite a fascinating wee story there. Be interesting. Question 9. Spot the invented Ben distillery which never existed. I'm going to give you a choice of 3 closed, lost Bens, but one of them is not. One of them is invented. Okay, you ready? A. Bendu, B. Benmore, C. Benachi. Benachi. One of those is made up, as far as I'm aware. Benbecula was a seafood factory before a distillery, says Graham Fraser. James Morgan is saying he's been in touch. He's been getting in touch, helping our confidence. 8 out of 8 for Falsgraf, for Graham Young, for Jimmy Jazz, for George P. Good to see you, George. Graham Fraser, of course, on an 8, along with Where's Roy? Roy of Vermeer in Norway. Superb. Steve Atkiss is here. Good to see you, Steve. Big Ed is here with Steve on an 8 out of 8 as well. Mikey Hayes had a wee banana skin, but Brian is on an 8 out of 8. Along with Rick Johnson, Andy Hills, Ian Bruce, Gene Kelly. So good to see you, Gene. So many people in here on an 8 out of 8, and everyone is deciding that it might not be a blee. We may have changed from the B options. Yuri is saying S. S is very close to the A. Yuri, maybe you're going for A? Yeah, he's corrected at A. What if there is something kind of close, says Sugar Kitty? Oh, it's true. It's true. A. Sugar Kitty's gone with A. How many consecutive 10 out of 10s has Graham Fraser gotten? It's the kind of stat that I would have to rely on Graham Fraser to record. Ben is here. Aquaviti, just home from work. Missed it all. Claiming a 10 out of 10. It's my night. Ben, I was asking for you. I was looking for you. There has been a Ben or two in tonight. But of course, I was thinking about you when we were going to do a vPub on the Bens, right? Good to have you, buddy. I hope you had a good night. I hope you didn't work too hard. It's brilliant to welcome you here. And I can tell you that Bendu, it does exist as a brand, famously spelt slightly differently from that, one of the infamous black whiskies. So there we go. As we go into the ass hat at the end, how many 9 out of 9s do we still have? Tim Donnerpass Whiskey, Rick Johnson, Too Slow Rob. Rob is here. Good to see you, buddy. Brian Cabayas. Jimmy Jazz is congratulating Ben on his 10 out of 10. That's fantastic. That's the rules of the vPub. Take it. Greg's Whiskey Guide is celebrating a 9 out of 9. Well done. Despite asking for help from Graham Fraser, he's gone and done it. And the chat jumps all the way down. All the 9 out of 9s are coming. I need to scroll back up. Ian Bruce, Graham Fraser, Big Ed, George P, Jeffrey Bangers is on a 9 out of 9. He's surprising himself. So that's GTJ Wilding. That's Gabriel. Gabriel, good to see you in, buddy. Jimmy Legg is on a 9 out of 9 as well. Superb. Graham Young. So Jimmy and Graham both on 9s. God, I need to get the chat back. What's going on? Jimmy Jazz 9. Gene Kelly 9. Fantastic. So many 9s. Here's the ass hat at the end. It is an ass hat. I hope it's in some way going to help some of you to enjoy a 10 out of 10 tonight. I think we're in good shape. The combined capacity, of course, is one of those old blasts from the past. Capacity, ass hat. The combined capacity of all the currently active Ben Scotch malt distilleries is what? Almost the same as a Glenfiddich. almost the same as B, Macallan, or almost the same as C, Dalmunach. Glenfiddich and Speyside, Macallan and Speyside, Dalmunach and Speyside. The current combined theoretical capacity litres of alcohol per annum of all the currently active Ben Scotch malt distilleries is what? It almost matches the same as Glenfiddich, Macallan, or Dalmunach. You take your chances, you go with it. Jeffrey Bangers is saying, Aquaviti, my family's away. So if I get a 10, I'm yelling real loud. You make the most of it, Jeffrey, don't you? You celebrate, but you've got to answer this, right? I'll be looking for your answer. Have you already plugged it in? He's going for B. We have the asset. Jimmy Legg is going C for 10. CCC, Mikey Hay, Pedro, Rick Johnson, Big Ed's going for A, Yuri's going for A. This is exactly what an asshat should do. Gabriel's going for B. Mike Molasses is going for B for Ben. This is absolutely asshattery at its finest. It's splitting the crowd. Although it looks like now it's leaning towards a C for Dalmunach. Okay, I'm going to put some numbers up here to see if it helps you. I can tell you that Glenfiddich is 21 million litres of theoretical litres of alcohol per annum. Macallan is 15 million and Dalmunach is 10 million. Does that help in any way? George P is going for C, Sugar Kitty C, Jeffrey Byers going C. That looks like a wee switcheroo at the last minute, which is fine. Brian Cabayas is going for C. Brian is going for C for Cabayas. Good for you. Anything goes, Sugar Kitty. You would think the smallest. Okay, I can tell you that the capacity of Benrinnes is 3.5 million litres. Benriach, 2.8 million litres. Ben Nevis, 2 million litres. Benromach, 700,000 litres. Benny, just a bit less than 700,000 litres. Benbecula, 150,000. And tiny micro distillery, little Bencool, 7,000 litres. If you add all of those together, you get just a nudge under 10 million litres per annum, which means that the answer was C for Dalmunach. So I suspect Jeffrey Bangers is going to be shouting loudly and running around with his t-shirt off, swinging it around his head, whooping, hopping over coffee tables and celebrating a 10 out of 10. There's going to be a lot of 10 out of 10s tonight. Let's see if we can catch them. Let's go in. Oh boy, says Henrik Schmidt. Andy Hells, 10 out of 10. Stevie O, 10 out of 10. Stevie O still in tonight playing along. Superb. Good to see you, buddy. 10 out of 10 for Rick Johnson. Graham Fraser. Fantastic, Rick. Congratulations, Graham. Dorpass Whiskey Tim. Jimmy Legg is celebrating. Oh, it's jumped. What's happened? There's too many 10 out of 10s for me to keep up. Gene Kelly. Daisy's celebrating getting the ass hat. Brian Cabayas, Jeffrey Myers, Jimmy Jazz, look at all the 10s. Use the emoji. Just light the chat up with the emoji. Superb, superb, superb. And I did not betray that there was going to be a Ben theme to the quiz at the end. I'll never do that. Sometimes there may, very occasionally, once in a blue moon, be a theme to the quiz at the end. But I'll never betray. I'll never let anyone know when it's going to be. The winner is the crowd. Greg's Whiskey Guide in Paris says you're absolutely spot on, big guy. Superb. Where's Roy in Norway? Also celebrating a 10. Well done, says Jimmy Jazz to all the 10 out of 10s. Andy, Sugar Kitty, Hoyt, George P, Gabriel. Oh, Gabriel's on a 9. The rest of the guys I've just read out is on 10s. Greg's Whiskey Guide. Daisy's congratulating all the 10s. Ian Bruce is on a 10. Stevie O, as I said. Graham Young also got a 10. Jimmy Jazz did get a 10. Jeffrey Banger certainly still celebrating his 10. Brian Cabayas got a 10 as well. Gene Kelly, Jimmy Legg, fantastic. Just so many 10s. Happiness is the theme. However, please don't fall into a false sense of security. The quiz at the end will always continue to challenge. It's quite nice that we managed so many 10 out of 10s tonight. Fantastic. So there we have it. This is maybe going to be the first episode in a series that might go on forward into the years ahead talking about how indies do it better. But for that to be a proper theme, indies, whether bottlers or distillers, need to continue to make whiskies that continues that theme. They need to keep doing it ever so slightly better. We are here to buy with our own money. We're here to drink with our own minds and our own decisions, our own subjectivity, and we're here to decide whether or not they are making that happen or not. And here's the saying, right, I'm off to bed. Bus driver training in the morning, based out of Benmore. Cheers, Roy, for a fab vPub. Good night, all. Best of luck for tomorrow, Andy. Nice to have you join us tonight. Ass hatted, says Gabriel. Peter is saying, with that, I call it a day. I'm going to hit the sack. Thanks as always for organising Aquaviti. Thank you, Peter. Thank you for being here. And to you, see you next time. Slanjavab. Thank you, Barfly, says Pedro, for another great vPub. Always great fun to spend some time with you all. Pedro, it's a pleasure, buddy. I love having you here. Jean Kelly saying, wishing you a January not so fond goodbye. Been a rough month here in the USA. It's not been much better here, Jean. I know that you're having tough times out there, fella. I'm thinking of you. It'd be nice to see you soon. Hoyt has bought my wee dram to say goodbye. Slanjavaro, I recommend Night Nurse, but whiskey. Yeah, I think I'm in good hands, buddy. We can never medicate with whiskey, but we can certainly enjoy the stuff that it has to offer us. Daisy is saying thank you for another fab vPub, Roy. Good night, everyone, and see you next week. Look forward to it, Daisy. Falsgraph is saying thank you for the really great vPub, Roy. Aquavita, your ass got me. And I will still have a nice jam. See you next week. So many chats coming in. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. Thoroughly enjoyed my Thursday night, as I always do. Can't wait till next week. I'll be back here again with a whole other angle on whiskey. But the most important thing is getting to enjoy it with all of you. I'll raise this wee glass to wish you the very best of health, Slanchava, and remind you all that you're very dearly loved. Until next time, cheers.